Hello, Nex-oz here, and welcome back to Mahoyo, or Witch on the Holy Night. Now last time if I remember, Aoko attempted to murder Suzuki? Or is it Sochuro? Sojuro was attempted murder Sojuro on the abandoned amusement park, and then some random marionette doll who just speaks random Latins constantly that apparently looks like her face and is attempting to kill her. But from the skin of the teeth, she managed to kill it along with the amusement park. And then she decides to call it a day, not to kill Sojuro for tonight. But then, surprise, Alice just comes in, not having it, and just floats into the air like some like some final endgame boss, or he who ends all things. It's that kind of villain entrance that, like floats down, that descends above, like disaster is going to happen, like the end of the world. Yeah, that kind of boss. I don't know. Was there like several times that they've been doing that? I mean, not that I hate it, but still, it's pretty cool. It's like superhero landing. I don't know if you get what I meant, but yeah, it's it's like that. Anyway, anyways, Night of the Witches 2. Yep, there she is. It's Alice. The melody stirred an emotion like nostalgia within them. Something once familiar, but now lost to this world. They believed beyond a shadow of a doubt that would play for all eternity. Wait, where's the... Is that like part of the spell? Like the music is playing? From opening stanza to final coda. Is that a music term? Because I don't know about music. Is that like... Is that usually how conductors work on? It was a mysterious siren song, merry yet longing, that heralded a return from dreams to reality. Ooh! A cat. A cat. That's cute. The night shook. The song was spun. Now their lost paradise was unearthed. Abandoned dreams. Is there any purpose of writing these poems? Of writing these pronouns? Forsaken idols. They all responded to the cry of the blue cat. Oh. The name of that bell was Diddle Diddle, Banquet of the Night. Diddle Diddle? As in the dish and the spoon ran away? Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle? You mean that kind of nursery rhyme? All fables made possible, all marvels made real, by the magecraft of Alice Kuonji, more magical than magic itself. But still magecraft, nonetheless. Did it just sink to the floor? Yeah, she ain't having it.
それはあなた一人で決めていいことだったかしら、青子。
Alice sat perched atop the clock tower like a black bird of ill omen. She smoothed the ruffles of her skirt as if she were preening. What's preening? I don't know what preening means. My god, these vocabulary of a bird straighten and clean its feather. Oh, so it's like cleaning itself.
Alice.
There was tension in Aoko's voice as she lifted her head. Calm atmosphere from a moment prior had long since been shooed away by Alice's gaze. Yes, you have seen her. She was standing in front of your school, Sojuro. Sojuro searched his hazy memory. He could not clearly make out her face at this distance, but he was sure he had seen her around town a number of times. Wait, he did? What, since, like, between part-time jobs? Where and when eluded him, however, as the air and tension in the air... Wait, what? Where and when eluded him, however, as the tension in the air kept him from connecting all the dots.
驚いた。随分と仲間思いになったのね、アリス。今夜は私に任せるんじゃなかったっけ?
Probably she doubted you. As she always did. Aoko readied her guard and took a half step forward. Wow, sure putting up a strong front, even though you kind of struggle against a mannequin. Unconsciously. From an objective standpoint, it almost looked like as though she were protecting the figure beside her. Ah, like the big cat. A puma. Alice's silence grew ever heavier. Her eyes, fixed on the ground below her, were devoid of emotion. An indescribable sense of dread and pressure laid claim over the plaza. Is that the only description he's asking? If he strained his ears, he could make out the faint ringing of a bell echoing in the distance. The rippling sound waves seemed unbelievably to be emanating from under the ground. And quiet he is. Sojuro stepped back, trying to stay out of the way. It was as though he had been told to go to hell. Well, he is closer to he is towards the great gateway to hell, so I don't know what to say to you, Sojuro boy. For the crime of asking if the girl was Aoko's friend. Nah. Some protagonists would dare not say that. If they were not that stupid. Sorry, let me play that again. If you didn't care, why'd you come over? Even though it was a certain feeling. Yet you're here.
どうせならもう少し早くその良くない予感とやらに気づいてほしかったけど。でもま、ご覧の通り自己解決したわ。夜も遅いし、さっさと帰っていいわよ、アリス。私の仕事っぷりを疑うわけじゃないんでしょ?
Your eyes locked one another. Alice's stare was uncomfortably cold. Aoko's was bold, daring Alice to air her complaints. Oh, really? Just like that?
せっかくだし二人で帰りましょう。その方があなたらしいわ。帰りしな、人形の話でも聞かせてちょうだい。
Wait, that's it? She's actually backing down? Oh.
らしいって何よ、らしいって。いいから帰れ帰れ、ぐうたらアリス。部屋に閉じこもって役に立たないムクドリでも作ってろっての。
Is it really a good idea to edge her like that, Alice? I mean, Aoko. A disappointed sigh escaped Alice's delicate lips. It seemed that the black-clad girl was more astonished than angry. Quietly, Alice questioned her roommate of nearly 2 years. A roommate that is kinda not friends, but not enemies at the same time.
呆れた。二人で秘密を守ると言ったのに。
Really? Did they keep a promise like that? I mean, isn't that like a promise between friends, which they're technically not friends? Because I find that hard to believe.
まだ半端にそっち側なの？それとも情でも移った？別に情っていうより私の気分。だいたい方針なんてその場その場で変わるもんでしょ。気分ならなおさらよ。そっちこそ一度した約束は絶対守るなんて時代遅れなんじゃない？
Yeah, it is a bit old-fashioned. The proverbial knives were out now. No quarter was given nor taken. Oh, there was a quarter? You know, speaking of quarters, I've always wanted to roll the coins between my fingers. I mean, I'm still working on it, but every time there's been constant droppings and all, I've always wanted to like roll it forward and then backwards, like how Jack Sparrow did. It looked kind of cool. Just want to say. Sadly, their partnership was one of convenience and had not reached a level of mutual understanding. Yes, she is at the bottom and she is at the top. Wrong interpretation, but I know. I'm aware of the interpretation. Their version of French quote-unquote friendship was both delicate and unique. When a conflict of opinion arose, each would refuse to budge until the other crumbled. Huh, so like mind games or such? Neither was concerned for the other's plight, at least for now. That was how they liked it. Sorry about the door, it was the wind. I opened the window because it was breezy weather.
そうね。今の暴言はあなたらしいとは思うけど。
Once again, she let out a sigh, even larger than the one before.
言い争いは後にしましょう。そこの彼をいなかったことにするのは私だけで十分だし。
Finally, she struck straight to the point. As if making to move a chess piece, Alice lifted her slender finger. Oh, she's gonna murder him with a fork? That's the final words that Sojuro would be killed by a knife. Even this simple action seemed mysterious to Sojuro, the same boy who had been hunted by his classmate Aoko Aozaki and borne witness to an automaton. Aoko's violence and an animated doll. Though perhaps far beyond the realm of logic, both these things were derived from reality. As surprised as he had been, there was no need to think of them as total mysteries. However, when the thing appeared out of thin air from a seemingly unrelated gesture, he had no word for it besides mysterious. That's his final thoughts when he's about to die. Sojuro stood motionless, captivated by this stage performer's magic trick, as the girl's single finger, magecraft, turned an attack directed at him. Rather than attack, it's more like a killing intent. A blue light flew from the side to repel it, annihilating it without a trace. I mean, it's a fucking fork, what do you expect? What? She actually did it on impulse? The fuck? Aoko immediately regretted her reflexive shot.
どういうこと？約束を曲げただけじゃなく、ルールまで破るつもり？
ルール破るためある。Yari chilled midwinter air plunged below freezing. Alice looked calm and collected on the outside, but in reality, she was sometimes even more hot-blooded than Aoko. Ooh, what a twist! This was especially true when it concerned her familiars. Wait, that fork was her familiar? I thought that fork was, I don't know, some sort of like some sort of telepathic thing. Accidentally breaking one would often result in a week of silent treatment. I mean, it's a goddamn fork. It's not like it talks or has feelings. It's a tool. But against someone who maliciously destroyed her things, yeah, maliciously rather than instinctually, Alice was prone to retaliate without warning.
あっちゃー、いつかやるとは思ったけど、ついに激鱗に触れちゃったか。
Alco sighed at herself. Even she was exasperated by her own stupidity. Yet she couldn't help but feel a pang of relief. Aren't you going to die, though? She did not intend to make any excuses, and she had no regrets. If she had broken the rules, then so had Alice.
青子。なんていうか。
If anything, this took a load off her mind. After all, now there was no going back. Alco never intended to break her own rules. So what, is she like sidelining it? If there was anything for Alco to regret it, it was putting too little power into her shot.
私的に今夜こいつに死なれるのは困るのよ。なんで日を改めて殺しに来てくれないアリス。いいでしょ？たった1日ぐらい。
To Alco, it was simply natural to take on a pro boner Kate. Bono. Not boner. Why did I... Jesus. I know it said Bono. Why did I say Bono? Okay. A pro bono case. Pro bono. In defense of an innocent suspect.
それは市場？悪い？一宿一般の恩義って割と大事にしてるの。私との協定より。ええ、時と場合によっては。
She's really sticking on that agreement, huh? Sojiro's human rights had not yet entered the argument. The girls were busy pouring oil on each other's flames. The girl clad in black was the first to move, or rather to erupt.
そう。よくわかったわ、青子。私は彼をここで殺す。あなたは彼をここだけ生かす。つまり、私と戦う。ということでいい？そんなのいいわけないじゃない。
Alco bit back the retort. She was very familiar with Alice's magecraft, and knew painfully well how many mystics were hidden in Alice's tiny body. Tiny. The odds of victory were essentially non-existent. So she's outmatched by her. And once the first shot had been fired, Alice Kuonji was without mercy. Whether facing a roommate or a quote-unquote friend, a most beloved family member or stranger. Once Alice began to fight as a witch, she became a heartless, unflappable monster. Unflappable. Alco advanced another half step forward as if to encourage herself. Well, it was too late to back down now. The situation was no longer a trivial quarrel over a witness. Bedrock of their so-called friendship had nothing to do with their individual abilities, and everything to do with the equals in will. That is why, in order to stay true to herself, Alco had no room for compromise or deception.
もちろん、あんたを殺すことになっても、そこのバカは生かしきるわ。それに。
Did she run out of magic bullets? Her magic circuits howled as they kicked into gear. Her body, which had mostly been dormant during the battle with the puppet, ignited, preparing to demonstrate its true worth. Man, it's like the chambers are still spinning.
それに、どの道最後には殺し合う仲でしょ、私たち。
Her courage overpowered any fear she had for her opponent. Was that like 5 shots? Was that 5 shots? Tuning your body, her magic circuits, to become like a barrel of a gun, Alco fired a magic bullet. It was an exceedingly basic magicraft formula. There was no nature interference, no creating of wind, parting of water, nor hastening of decay. It was simply the process of converting the imaginary activity known as magical energy into something real before releasing it as a heat. Thus, Aoko's destructive power was equal to her supply of magical energy. Just firing like machine guns, hey? The magic bullets she had used against Sojiro were among the most basic single-action magecraft that did not require an incantation. At her present ability, Aoko's main mode of attack, her magic bullet, could be fired at 3 levels of power. These were at the 2nd level. This required a double action magecraft, casting through activation of her crest combined with a simplified incantation. So in other words, amplifying the basic necessity of an attack. Oh, what is that, a magic barrier? Without blinking, Alice dispersed the shot that Aoko had mustered all of her spirit to fire. What was that, 6 rings? 6 circles? Look at Sojiro. Look at Sojiro's shocked face. It's so comical. Aoko tutted in frustration. Swift sneak attack that used a simplified incantation would not be enough to break Alice's guard. What do you think talking Prowl on bringing the barrier down is gonna help? Aoko provoked Alice in order to disguise her own lack of composure. Somehow, Alice seemed delighted by Aoko's bravado. I mean, is there an ever? And you're saying that you're not human yourself? My god. I think I'm starting to get the taste of difference between water. And this water isn't that good, but hey. I need to drink it. I need some hydration. Smiling with her Alice giggled. Smiling with her heartfelt amazement, Alice gestured her left hand toward the earth. Ah yes, the ground shift. Her entire arsenal are forks and plates. Countless utensils shot out from underneath the cobblestones, paving the plaza. Oh yeah, Shizuki. She grabbed his hand as she shouted, jumping backward before he even had a chance to respond. He's not even panicked at all. As if they had wills of their own, the utensils had suddenly appeared from the ground, gave chase. As the barrier of spears grew around them, Aoko and Sojiro put some distance between themselves and the clock tower. That's probably a fluke. Just under 30 feet stood between them and Alice. The lethal weapons that had crumbled the stone beneath them fell short of what Aoko had anticipated. I don't know about the size perspective, but are the forks and plates supposed to be that big, or is it perspective sizes? Excuse me. They now encircled the clock tower, making the scene look like a burning of a witch at the stake. Maybe she's setting up a ritual field. The path behind them was safe. If they wanted, they could try to make a break for the main gate and escape. Then why would you mention that? Also, what is this Sojiro's face? It's so fucking comical. Even though it's such a tense atmosphere. If she could just make it back to town, it would be Aoko's win. Yeah, why would you stand and talk? All she wanted to do was let Sojiro get away for the night, so if she could get him back to the city, it would be, for the most part, mission accomplished. At least, that's what Alice's want her to think. Ah, a vial. Or she had thought. Without even offering a glance at her targets below, Alice carefully and lovingly pulled out a bottle from her pocket.
緑のフラスコ?
Shouldn't you be running right about now?
あれって確か。やば！とにかくファイヤー!
Her shot was deflected with ease. Gone was Aoko's earlier bravado. It was only natural. Aoko had indeed grown as a mage. Over the last 2 years of study, her studies had progressed well. But... and she'd more or less gotten the grasp of her roommate's tendencies and abilities. Wow, what an aura. To have a black silhouette and red eyes looking down. This had made her conceited enough to believe that under favorable circumstances, she'd be able to show Alice a thing or two in the fight. At least she thought. Alice uncorked the magical bottle. A gentle breeze caressed her cheek. Diddle Diddle fled as a new player stepped onto the stage. But from where would it enter? The sound of footsteps. A nostalgic parade approached. What? She's activating the lights? Still putting that summoning circle sound, huh? What is this? What is she doing? What emerged was a miracle that Aoko Aozaki, an apprentice mage, had never witnessed. Why is she turning all the lights on? The dead came to life. The inanimate awakened. The woods were enveloped by the mists. Fire-breathing lizards lurked in the swamps. Puppets made merry at midnight. Alice Kuonji's slender fingers had transfigured the entirety of the park, as if gently stroking the back of an elderly cat.
いいわ。ごっこ遊びをしましょう、青子。
For one night, the wasteland of dashed hopes and dreams was restored to its former glory. Is it? Doesn't seem like it. It was an immortal monster ready to devour reality. A dark fairy tale that, once unleashed, would never let its prey escape.
逃げられるものなら逃げてみせる。どこまで行けるかわからないけど、この夜を越えることができたのなら、あなたの勝ちにしてあげる。
Oh, she's actually gonna give her the penalty of that? Her declaration marked the start of a desperate battle. The witch in black laughed at her friend. Her musical mirth filled with affection, sadness, and innocent delight. She really must have a thing for classical music, huh? Faded glory returned to Kitsyland. The neon glow of innumerable lights illuminated the night. Speakers filled the air with the sound of vinyl music. Merry-go-rounds, small and large, whirled round and round. All in all, it made for a mind-bending spectacle. It was certainly possible to power the facilities by transmuting magical energy into electricity via alchemy. That said, simply supplying the park with electricity would not have brought back to life that which was broken. The young woman did this not by mixing chemicals into a compound, but by melting down divine providence into a witch's brew. Ah, so that flask has divine essence to it. Similar to Divine's heroic spirits? Like divine servants?
まずいわね。アリスのプロイは何個か見てきたけど、今回のは桁が違う。
Oh, that's her magecraft name? Ploys?
セット。
Stifling her anxiety, Alko fired up the crest on her right arm. If magic circuits were a mage's engine, then their crest was software that assisted their magecraft. Ah, just like putting the software into the hardware. For the fledgling mage Aoko, this was her trump card. Or perhaps her only trump card. All she had to do was supply magical energy to her crust-based formula. It may not have been the strongest magecraft, but was hers, proof that she is the successor of the Aozaki lineage.
講師2層直流数門
Chamber loaded. The pattern of her crest shifted to execute the formula, which then connected to her magic circuits. The process resembled trains changing rails, a puzzle involving dozens of circuits. She constructed it as swiftly as possible without sacrificing the quality of its construction. Damn, she must be an expert in, like, changing chambers or stuff. Instant magecraft cast without an incantation would not be enough to reach Alice Kunji. Aoko had gauged the strength of Alice's defense with her initial shots. She would dial up power 5 times the next time, driving 20 tons of force into her target. And you think driving it into a bigger firepower would do the job? I mean, come on, Aoko, it's not like you could one-shot her from some one-trick pony shot. Alice had the protection of the thick hanging fog and the dense barrier around her. However, this attack would be more than enough to pierce through both. Really? Are you sure? If Aoko struck home, it could cave in Alice's chest and end the fight. At worst, it would at least knock Alice down from her position atop the clock tower. Oh, she's actually going to kill her. Oh, she actually wants to kill her. Just a question. Even though his life is at stake, he's just casually I have a question. As always, there was one guy who spoiled deadly tension, pulling Aoko out of killer mode. Sojiro had been looking back and forth between Aoko and Alice in confusion. You know, he could have just run. What's going on now? Yeah, that's the first question you would ask? What? Look, I know you're dumb, but not this dumb. He said he might ask for directions to the train station. Staying silent like at a time like this? Normally she would have lashed out in response, but his deadly serious tone shocked rather than angered her. Oh, he really is serious. It's just between the scales of death and joke. Aoko swallowed back a sigh and returned her focus to activating her crest.
交渉は決裂。ちょっと怒らせすぎた。あの子から見れば、まあいい機会だし、遊園地ごと私を亡き者にしようって腹ね。
He's still confused. Sojiro tilted his head as if begging for a simpler explanation. You could just say that she's going to kill you now.
私、割とあの子に恨まれてるから。捕まったが最後。どんな風に殺されるか想像すらできないわ。要するに、あんたも私もあの子をどうにかしないと生きて帰れないってことよ。
そんなとばっちりだ。
Dude, you're saying I got dragged into your core? Yeah, he's saying it like he's got nothing to do with it. Such a normal reaction of an innocent civilian.
まあ、そういうことになるかもね。
As Sojiro protested in a tone wholly inappropriate to the situation, Aoko let another blast rip right from her. Aoko let another blast rip from her right arm. She was not aiming at Sojiro though. A little earlier in the day, Aoko would have been happy to do exactly that, but now her intention was focused on the girl in black atop of the tower. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if a second one shot would do the trick. Why are you so shocked? You exactly did the same thing as you did before. It's not like increasing the firepower is gonna do the trick. Aoka's mind struggled to catch up to her astonishment. Oh, you think? You could have at least changed your tactics. She had fired the strongest, fastest magic bullet she had the ability to conjure, and Alice blocked it. Who would have thought? Well, that much was to be expected. Even she knew. But Alice set her mind to defending herself. Such an attack was child's play. But what just happened? Something Aoko had never seen before leapt to Alice's defense. A team of horses? A plague of locusts? No, those existed in the real world, unlike what Aoko had just witnessed. Normal creatures could not form like a spontaneous cloud of fog and then dissipated just as quickly in the night sky. A cloud of fog? Guess that cloud of fog has so much mass to block that attack. Oh god, that is creepy as Wait, could it be that her magic shot powered up the entirety of this amusement park's power? Impossible things moved in impossible ways. Alice was not even supplying them with any power source. Ah, I see. She didn't block it. She absorbed it. Those things never needed power in the first place. Those broken and discarded things did not follow the rules of mankind. That is such a creepy-ass ragdoll. And that's its mascot? What? Is that a fucking horse on in a train? As a train? As part of a train? What the fuck? This was an invasion of fairy tales. Compared to them, the automaton looked merciful. Autonomous puppets were products of Magecraft. Even then, they behaved as puppets should. These newly animated things, however, were nothing of the sort. Empty vessels became living creatures. Dummies warped into malformed beings. Hey, isn't that the pumpkin carriage from Cinderella? Or is it... Did they call it like the jack-o'-lantern carriage? Is that how they're going? Like Halloween themed? There was a fog so dense with magical energy it visibly spread to all corners of the park, bringing with it a monstrous welcoming party that easily numbered over 1,000. Spurred on by the shuddering sensation running down her spine, Aoko fired a barrage of single-action magic bullets. Now it's been blocked by balloons? Her impulsive attacks scattered futilely. The knights of the merry-go-round soared into the sky. Every time, Sojiro is just putting on such comical face of, oh, shock and awe! Confusion! Green fire-breathing lizards flocked. Oh, so there are fire-breathing lizards? I thought that was an analogy. The bakeries opened their doors once again, and human-sized loaves of fresh bread marched from their ovens as platoons of newly baked soldiers. Wait, wait, the unbread are coming to life? Aoko and Sojiro were completely surrounded. The Ferris wheel creaked as it gently turned. A rickety train car raced about the roller coaster tracks with Kitsy, tears streaming down its face aboard. Where the fuck is Kitsy? Is it that ragdoll cat? It was a grossly twisted fantasy. The girl in black reigned over the Insanity Field Park. Oh, now we're screwed. Yeah, you think? Alko was transfixed by the scene unfolding around her. Then she realized what was happening.
そうだこれは
Alice had once told her of of Meinster's familiars. Among them were 3 of particular notoriety. Notoriety? One of which she recalled being capable of something similar to this. And it was called...
プロイキッシャフラットスナーク
Ploy Kickshar Flat Snark. Is it some sort of magical device or a magecraft?
青崎だから後ろ
Struck by Alko's bullets, the creature exploded into splinters. Oh, is it the bread soldiers? It was clear Alko's shots were becoming more powerful, but it was also the case that these beings were less robust than your average automata.
しずきくんこっち
Alko turned away from the clock tower, grabbed his hand, and began to run.
青崎
ごめんこれ無理逃げるわよ
逃げるってどこに
どこってとにかく行けるところまで
They're just running desperate, huh? She shouted as though trying to persuade herself as she valiantly cleared a path. Alko's magic bullets flew like a scream. Blowing away the creatures that blocked or simply gathered around their path, she made a hole for them to escape through. Kind of a waste of magic bullets, don't you think? Can't you just, like, I don't know, like, kick them, punch them? I mean, they're made of bread, right? Surely they're just fragile, right? Magical bullets exploded like blue fireworks. Alko and Sojiro ran down the bumpy brick road. Their bond, forged in the heat of battle, went far beyond mutual convenience. They headed for the park's exit at full speed without exchanging a word or a look. The weirdness only extended as far as the park border, so they would be safe as long as they made it outside. Yeah, at least she wants you to think it that. But... speaking in pure numbers, the difference in strength was 2 versus an army. Or rather, 1 versus an army. Yeah, Sojiro is more like a liability now. Sojiro was hardly useful in this situation, and man power wasn't really the issue here, since they were facing puppets.
さっきの大丈夫上からこうでっかいハサミが落ちてきたけど
Alko shouted as he blasted away the monsters that stood in their path. There was no time to stop for breath, or even to look back.
なんとかギリギリ
As Sojiro pursued, his voice too had naturally become shrill. I mean, yeah, he has been running. 5 minutes earlier? They had broken out of the siege at the plaza surprisingly fast. For 5 minutes? It seemed that the residents' awakening differed case by case, with larger creatures taking additional time. I wonder if how long was the fight with the stray doll?
ラッキー朝に弱いタイプばっかと見た
What do you mean morning type? Alko joked as she mowed down the small fry that popped. Oh, it was a intentional joke. Okay. But then, without warning, something outrageous extended its way down from above them. It was the claws of the 60-foot lobster adorning the roof of a seafood restaurant. Oh, how fancy. It's all... every time, it's always just this face whenever dire situation comes. Whenever they're about to die. Its pincers were like a guillotine. As Alko and Sojiro cut across in front of the restaurant, the Red King pressed in at tremendous speed, keen on splitting them each in 2.
しずきくん U ターンこっちはダメ
The gate was just on the other side of the restaurant, but they had to take the long way around in order to lose the giant lobster snapping at their heels. Waiting along their detour had been a horde of monsters, too many to count.
なんとかギリギリ
Ah, so that was just 5 minutes now. Sojiro called out in response, recalling just how narrowly he had avoided his head being severed clean from his body.
って前うわなんだあれ焼きたてか
Fish replay.
要するに下級兵士よ
The only question he's worried, are they freshly baked? Even though he's looking at bread puppets. Aoko halted her sprint and set her crest into full operation.
7、6、5メートル
At this
程度
distance,
ならスナップだけで事足りる
oh, that was Aoko's line. I do like her magic bullets. They shine like sparkling fireworks. As the description said, they really are like fireworks. Sliding along the brick path, she brandished her right arm. She loosed a shower of magic bullets. Snap was a single action spell that favored rate of fire over power, and it mowed down the monsters with satisfying pops.
青崎そっちも
了解
Damn, it's shooting off like a Gatling gun! Blue explosions bloomed along the lamp-lit promenade. Isn't she like low on magic bullets? Like... She can't just keep shooting it forever, right? Aoko's curtain of fire fanned out. It was a marvelous star mine fireworks show. I don't know what star mine is. The toy bread men turned to charcoal.
いける数でこそ押されてるけどこの状態が続くなら逃げ切れる
Again, there's his face. Every time. He has that face. He shows that face. Just like serious and then shock.
しずきくんそっちはい
ない空いてるここからなら入り口の東側に出られるはずだ
With a magical barrage that would leave an average spellcaster blue in the face, the novice mage broke through the sea. Oh, hey, look! It's the Blue Jay! Its first appearance! Even though I looked at it from the, CG gallery for some reason. Meanwhile, his single bird keenly watched everything unfold. Was it some sort of drone? Like a scouting drone? Oh, so it was her blue jay. The moment the bluebird descended into its master's field of vision, it made its high-pitched call. The girl listened expressionlessly to the report.
構わないわ予想通りよ撃つこと壊すことしか脳がなくても青子の魔力の使い方は波じゃないから急増の使い魔じゃまだ相手にはならないでしょう
Robin flapped its wings as it tweeted in response. Perhaps it was criticizing Alice for complimenting Aoko. Or perhaps it was jealous of Aoko for being praised by Alice. Which is it? Alice could barely make sense of its chirping rant. Even though she knows what that bird reported her, Aoko Awazaki was a novice mage. Until just 2 years ago, she had grown up with no background in magecraft, compared to Alice, who was raised as a witch from birth. Aoko possessed far less talent and experience. There was simply no comparison to be made. In contest of skills in magecraft, 10 times out of 10, Alice would be declared the victor. However, that narrative changed when it came to a battle for life or death. Alice Kuonji was not the type of mage suited to combat, while Aoko Awazaki, on the other hand, was built for it. In a contest that pitted magical energy against magical energy, even Alice would concede that Aoko had the upper hand. Ah, she has that much magical energy than her. Aoko's manipulation of magical energy was extraordinary. The scale of her magic circuits was smaller than that of Alice, but their rotational speed, durability, and output quality, not to mention efficiency, were otherworldly. That was Aoko Aozaki's hallmark. Though she had many failings when handling sophisticated formula, in just 2 years of practice, Aoko has surpassed Alice in simple formulae that merely required an energy input. She also had a genius instincts and adaptability. Though Aoko was not particularly proficient at executing magecraft, she was terrifyingly fast. Ah, so she has development potential. If she had been born outside the Awazaki clan, she would have doubtless risen to fame as a competitive sharpshooter.
でも残念ね。
In a straight shootout, Alice did not stand a chance. Alice Kuonji had never bothered to learn primitive magecraft like magic bullets in the first place. She was the classic puppeteer. Her familiars served as her arms and legs to carry out all the particulars of a battle.
制限時間には気づいているわよね、青子。魔力はいくらでも貸してあげるけど、あなたの魔弾はあと半時で根崩れするわ。
How long? What's the time limit, though? Chirping as if in agreement, the robin took flight. It had been nearly 10 minutes since Alice had made the amusement park into her dominion. It was been 10 minutes? Jesus. To what would the green fog give birth next? Aoko and Sojiro, still running about, would soon come to understand the gravity of their situation.
Shizuki-kun, 正門ってこっち？
ああ、その店を曲がれば出口だ。
Running non-stop at full speed had them at their limits, their breath ragged. The duo rounded a corner at a breakneck pace. Wait, how would Shizuki know where the exit is, even though he doesn't know his way around? Doesn't Aoko know the way around the amusement park? Well, I guess it's more like the interior, that one specific place that is the Mirror Castle. Amusement park though it was, this was still the infamous Kitty Land. It would have taken a high school student 20 minutes to sprint the entire circumference of the park. 20 minutes? And though they were now intimately familiar with the park's geography, ah yes, the jack-o'-lantern carriage. It was changing beyond recognition. The transformation was not limited to the park's residents either.
青崎、
何を？
言いたくないんだけど、この遊園地広くなってないか。
Ah, it was. Ah, so that's her magecraft. Distorting the illusions of the park. Like a genjutsu. Kind of pale. Just like a pale comparison to reality marble, is it? Their problem wasn't as mundane as mistaking the location of the exits nor the strange terrain. No, the park was warping and twisting in upon itself. Even as they ran, its structure was expanding and growing like that of a living creature. Soon, the pair noticed that the mob encircling them had grown even stronger. Entrusting her back to Sojiro, Aoko summoned all of her effort just to keep from whining. No one would blame Sojiro for cowering in shock. For Aoko to do the same? She bore responsibility for causing and then dragging him into this mess. She could not afford to succumb to panic.
大丈夫。落ち着け私。遊園地の果てはある。遠いけど、鉄柵はちゃんと見える。フラットスナークだって制限なしってわけじゃない。外に逃げるって選択は正しいはず。
Is it?
現状、外までは目算で1キロぐらいだけど。
Up until now, they had been too concerned with simply running. Their breathing had become labored. If they had to run another mile without rest, they'd end up collapsing along the way.
青崎、体大丈夫か？
え？
The whisper from behind Aoko pulled back to reality.
大丈夫だけど、ちょっと一息入れたいわね。
賛成。ここから休みなしで外周まで走るのはやめた方がいい。
驚いた。しずきくんも外まで走ろう派とは。
Ah, the familiar... Ah, I know this soundtrack. It's the song that I played from Fate Grand Order. I think it was like the climactic battle. It sounded similar. She has let slip a giggle. Far from debilitated by panic, her comrade in arms had been analyzing the situation and forming an escape plan.
ちょっとだけ建物に逃げ込むのは。
気は進まないけど、それしかないわね。
The Breadmen had them completely surrounded. Perhaps this might have been a problem for an average person, but for Aoko, breaking through their formation to get to a building would be a cinch. The issue was...
問題はどんな店を選ぶかってこと。
She considered the characteristics of the transforming park. What would pose a danger and what was safe? The most important factor was not the strength or the complexity of the building.
そうだ。選ぶならあの単純さで正しいはず。しずきくん、あっち。
After rallying the monsters, Aoko hopped behind the counter, soon followed by Sojuro.
カウンターに隠れてて。
Like she was in a western shootout, Aoko squared off against the monsters, using the counter as a cover. His face.
ビンゴ。ここならスナーク化しないんだ。
After assessing the current state of the enemy, Aoko sat down under the counter.
あいつらは。
店の周りで地団打踏んでるわ。理由があってね。あいつらはここには入ってこられないのよ。
Can they? Aoko gave the perplexed Sojuro a grin and took a moment to catch her breath. She heaved a heavy sigh of relief and fatigue.
とりあえずコーヒーブレイクね。ここは遊園地の中でも遊びのない場所だから。あいつらにとっては鬼門なのよ。
Blandest place.
レジスターも調理器具も最近のものだし、擬人化されたマスコットもないし、スナーク化するにはちょい文明犬すぎるってこと。
She knows a lot about the snark. What, does the snark only affects, like, imaginary characters?
スナーク。
あいつらの名前よ。つけたのは私じゃなくてアリスなのかしらね。あの子の性格的にちょっと想像できないけど、まあとにかくそういう名前。
Perhaps now at ease from knowing they were safe, Sojuro seemed enthralled in her explanation. Aoko could not help but chuckle as Sojuro nodded sagely. It was certain he had no idea what she was talking about. Normally this would have irritated her, but this time she was grateful for the warmth of his strange sobriety. Yeah, usually, like, any normal, like, some normal bystander protagonist would say, Huh? What are you talking about? I don't get it.
それはともかく、調子良さそうだな、青崎。
Mistaking her smile for composure, Sojuro broke into a smile himself. It was just another link in a chain of misunderstandings, but there was no need to redress it.
あれ？あなたから見てもわかる？私のマダンの威力が上がっているの。
そりゃ、ミラーハウスで散々追いかけ回されたからな。あの時と同じ動作なのに物騒さが増していれば嫌でもわかる。
Yeah, she is attempting to kill him after all.
でもいいのか？確か数に限りがあるとか言ってただろう。もう随分撃っちまったけど、20、30じゃ効かないぞ。
Oh, so he counted.
あんた、時々あれよね。
ん？
Her opinion of him improved, just a little bit.
なんでもない。私のマダンの威力が上がっているのは単純に魔力の濃度の問題。さっきから霧がかかってるでしょ？あれ、全部魔力なのよ。弾を撃つための燃料と思って。
Magical energy was divided into two broad categories. First was odd and produced was a mage's body, and second was mana, filled the atmosphere. Oh yeah, I do remember magical energies. There are two different. That is odd and mana. I think that odd is more like the reserve in the human body, and then mana is like the outside. It's like the force. So, but yeah, I kind of like Googled it on the Fate Wikia. Maybe it'll give me more info about it. At the moment, the amusement park had turned into a fairy tale land, overflowing with mana. Ah, so the mana is loading her bullets up. Although it meant nothing to the average person, to a mage it was a paradise where spells could be cast as much as one pleased. Oh, so that's why she could fire so many bullets. And even Alice mentioned that her bullets would be useless. Not like... She never mentioned it running out.
じゃあ残り魔力とやらは気にしなくていいのか。注意すべきは怪我と体力だけ。
まあ、個人的な責任においてはその限りね。
Soldier will breathe a sigh of relief. Wow, he's actually relieved to hear that. From Sojiro's perspective, more so than the monster she mowed down, Uncle was the biggest bully in the playground. He had been concerned about what would happen should her magical energy be exhausted, but luckily for him, she was far from surrendering her crowing.
頼りにしてくれるのは嬉しいけど、ぬか喜びよ。あんな雑魚たち、ただ動いているだけのガラクタなんだから。スナーク本体は当然として、アリスが他の童話の怪物を出してきたら、私じゃどうにもならない。
She realized the gravity of her situation.
他の童話の怪物。遊園地をこんな風に変えたやつ以外にまだいるのか？
そう。プロイキッシャーって名付けられた私たちでさえ目を背けたくなる反則。不可能な夢物語をも再現する時代に取り残されたデタラメよ。
So they are limited to revive imaginary characters. Like Mickey Mouse and all them imaginary mascots. Sojiro's expression seemed to be coloring her out on the hypocrisy.
あのね、私たちはちゃんと現代に寄り添った魔術師よ。
Yes, Magecraft modern standards.
できないこともあるし、当たり前のことだけど、近代兵器にはかなわない。20世紀、まあ、いろんな戦争の後押しで、兵器の進化は私たちを超えちゃったから。
So for mages, they'd be killed by modern weapons like guns. Well, I guess that does make sense. I mean, despite how amazing it looks, even they can be killed by some simple tools like gun, knives.
けど、あの子のは違う。どんなに人間の技術が進歩しようと関係ないって怪物なの。
Wow. Oddly surprising that she's praising her.
例えば、あのブレッドマンいるでしょ。あいつには自動拳銃とか効かないわよ。多分、意味が分かっていないから。
Probably because guns make no sense to them? What, is it like conception? Is it like the perspective? Uncle casually gestured outside past the counter.
アリスの使い魔は、すべてが空想によってこねられた神秘なの。
Mystics needed.
前提からしてありえないことだから、通常の物理法則と折り合いが悪い。空想と現実は両立しないっていう、ごく当たり前の理由でね。
なるほど。ブレッドマンってのは、あの動く焼きたてパンのことなんだな。
Literally walking loaves of bread. Sojiro seemed to have ignored the majority of Algo's explanation and only reacted to the part that caught his curiosity.
話を戻すけど、あいつらと近代兵器の相性は最悪。ロケット弾でも効果はないわ。意思の疎通、秩序の共有ができてないから。
What? Rockets won't work on those breads? Even though she shredded them like well, I guess they are magically enhanced, so we can't even break them with physics? Damn. So it's only limited to conception.
プロイキッシャーにとって彼らの世界には存在しないもの。 意味がわからないものは触れることなく無産する。
Anything that doesn't exist in their world, anything they don't understand, disintegrates before it can even touch them.
彼らに通じるのは同じ神秘を帯びた魔力だけっていうデタラメぶりよ。もう完全に概念空間っていうか概念宇宙っていうか。
Is he even paying attention? Ah, so magical energy could kill them. Something ridiculous like a toy hammer or something like that. Same level of mystics.
要するにあいつらは伝承防御っていう特別なルールを持っていて、単純に強い力、強い魔術じゃ効果は薄いの。元になった童話にちなんだ欠点をつかないと倒せない。
Ah, I see. So we have to play their field. Folklore defense. Neither pure force nor strong magecraft have much effect. So we have to play in their playing field. So that's the only thing that could kill them.
ギリシャ神話のアキレスあたり分かりやすい例えなんだけど、知ってる？
Sojiro shook his head. Well, he doesn't. Well, he was living under a mountain, so he doesn't know much about it.
そう。無事帰れたら飛び丸あたりに教えてもらって。定番だけどいい話よ、あれ。そう。無事帰れたら飛び丸あたりに教えてもらって。定番だけどいい話よ、あれ。
Sojiro was feeling pretty lost, but he did his best to grasp the situation. He thought that ploy kickshaws were scary enough to chase Aoko and that puppet from before out of the house barefoot. Certainly the scene before them was the stuff of nightmares. But Sojiro had a different way of thinking.
やっぱり青崎の方が怖くないか。
More scared.
あんた死ぬの？
She's just loading her magic bullet to kill him. Sojiro Raven protests solemnly and pointing out that she had made his case for him.
あのね、今私たちを取り囲んでるのはおまけに過ぎないの。アリスにとってあのブレッドマンもロブスターもソーセージ屋のミンチマシーンも全部が全部私が撃ってる魔弾より価値がない。いい？あの動くマスコットたちはね、ただのおまけなの。アリスが解放した童話の怪物の一呼吸みたいなものなのよ。
呼吸ってこれが？
私だって考えたくないわよ。でもそれが現状。たった一体の童話の怪物だけで私たちは手一杯。
So, should we breathe the same air as them? Is that the way to kill them?
そういうわけだからアリスがあと一体でも追加したら諦めて。
追加ってこれに制限はないのか？
あの子が出し惜しみしなければまだ何体かストックはあるでしょうけど、まあ成立する条件はあるわね。例えば川がないと目を覚まさない怪物もいる。
No river.
この遊園地噴水はあるけど川はないでしょ。元になった童話縛りなの、あの子の使い魔は。
Oh, no wonder nursery rhymes were mentioned. Guess she really has a thing for fairy tales, eh?
童話ってかけそばとか？
Small of someone.
ここに川がないのは不幸中の幸いね。もしあったらもっと直接制圧に向いたやつが出てきてた。
Oko continued, simply completely ignoring Sojiro.
話の続きだけど、アリスの魔術の基本はマザーグースって知らないか？イギリスの歌で遊び心に富んだメルヘンチックな内容よ。ただそっち系のプロイキッシャーは怖くないの。みんなそれなりになんとか魔術にも落とし込める範囲だから。
With some form of magecraft. Nothing specific.
聞きたくないんだけど、そっち系じゃないのは？
マザーグースを下地にしたとある創作童話系。あの子のお母さんが好きでね。こっち系のはどいつもこいつも尋常じゃない。私たちから見ても勘弁してって言いたくなるわ。
Every single one is bizarre? And how bizarre?
で、
Some
この
otherworldly
遊園
creature?
地を生き返らせたのはこっち系よ。多分フラットスナークってやつだと思う。私も聞き流していたから詳しくはわからないけど。
Sojiro swallowed the discomfort making its way up his throat. He really wanted her to explain things a little less vaguely, but something she had just said necessitated further investigation.
待て青崎。あの子の話を聞き流したって。なんで
Word paying attention!
いや、説明してもらったのは随分と前だし、あの頃はアリスの話あんまり信じられなかったのよね。
Are you kidding me? She is going to kill you and you didn't pay attention to that one detail that could have been a weakness?
私が素人だと思って大げさに自分の魔術を語ってくれてるな、舐められてるなとか。
Oh my god, Oko! In truth, if anyone hadn't taken the lesson seriously, it was Oko. She would learn that lesson firsthand soon enough when she experienced just how real Alice's monsters were. She'd also discover how heretical the Mind Stirred witches truly were in the world of magecraft.
その聞き流した内容は
何でも強力な結界を張るプロイだって。アリスが受け継いだプロイは山ほどあるけど、その中でもえりすぐりの一つよ。捨てられたもの、忘れられたものを童話的に蘇らせるやつで、今まで誰も破ったことがないとか。
Supposedly.
それでついたあだ名が触れられぬもの。
Untouchable.
フラットスナークじゃないのか。
それもあだ名。とにかく正体がわからないやつばっかりなんで、一つの個体に複数の名前が付けられるの。
Well, why would it give its nickname from the one particular magecraft?
フラットスナークはその中でも正体不明さはトップランクのデタラメぶりよ。
What, there's a hierarchy of magecrafts? Well, I guess that makes sense. I mean, there's like the Gander, and then there's what is it called? Puppeteer, Bounded Feet. Wait, no, was it Field Construction Field? What was the casters have? The standard casters territory create. Oh yeah, territory creation. Yeah, territory creation. Although, does territory creation, do mages also have territory creation? I thought it was only limited to casters. Generally. I mean, I'm aware that not all casters have territory creations. Just in general.
あなた、ルイス・キャロルのスナーク狩りって本知ってる？
Come on, Sojiro was born in the mountains. How could he read a book? Where could he find a book of the haunting snark?
いや、そもそもルイス・キャロルというのは
Luis Carter. I mean, come on, he's born in the mountains. What did you expect?
そっからか。ドジスン教授はそうね、特殊性癖を持った妄想紳士ってとこ？まあこっちは別にどうでもいいか。人によっては時間の無駄だろうし。
Even though they're just hiding, she's just explaining some fairy tales to him.
今重要なのは彼が残した著作の方。スナーク狩りはね、スナークって呼ばれる正体不明の怪物を捕まえようと奔走する冒険家たちの話なの。
Oh, sounds like a straightforward story.
キャロルらしい、皮肉ばっちり、支離滅裂、意味不明、結末不在の本当に困った本で、一行は島で苦しみつつ、最終的にはスナークを見つけるものの、見つけたベイカーは唐突に姿を消して終わってしまう。
Party does ultimately find the snark on the island after much hardship. Ends with the protagonist who found it, the baker, suddenly disappearing. Wow, spoilers! Well, not that I really care.
よくわからないもの探しに奔走する人間の風刺なんだけど、この遊園地において誰がベイカーで何がスナークかは言うまでもないでしょ。
Ah, yes, Baker is Alice and Snark is this spell, right? Oko elected not to share this, but Flat Snark had other popular names as well. The Enigmatic Island, 5-dimensional plane. these names were not given to it by Alice, but rather muttered by mages who the Mindsters defeated. In mathematics, snark is a term used in graph theory to refer to contradictory and impossible planar graphs. A plane proven to be unable to exist in this world was given the name, apt for an ill-fated existence paradoxical in nature. The fairy tale monster that ascribed this name was said to hold no form discoverable by man. Alco also declined to mention something else. Flat Snark was a fairy tale monster that could grow. It would hide somewhere in the amusement park, continuously exhaling magical energy until the park completely transformed into a fantasy land.
脅かしてもしょうがないし。
何か言ったか？
別に。簡単に言って、童話世界の再生がフラットスナークの力なの。この遊園地との相性は抜群でしょうね。何しろ元々が童話を元にした遊び場だから。
Even though it was poorly reviewed. If this had been a business district, for example, Flat Snark would have posed far less of a threat. At most, its power would be limited to projecting the shadow of a dinosaur onto a building's window panes.
Oh, だからここは安全だって。ん?
Sojiro realized that something was wrong when he noticed the gluttonous liquid dripping into his back. He looked up to the ceiling. Their eyes met. Before he had the chance to think, Sojiro hopped up from the floor. Taking the initiative, he jumped out from behind the counter. Trying to stop him from committing an act of suicide, she also came to her feet. Immediately, she noticed something coming to life overhead. Well, they're fucked. The gargantuan mouth clamped shut. With no mascot to speak of, the burger joint itself began to transform into one giant monster. How come they didn't notice the ceiling in the first place? Couldn't they just like scour before they hide? Well, they didn't get enough time, but still. Flex their creative muscle. Naoko aired out her grievances as she ran. There was no safe haven left. Moment by moment, the last remnants of civilization were being eroded away by fairy tales. What? They put a fucking dragon in this park? Where the hell? How many are there? The amusement park had reached the final stage of snarkification. It was not just the mascot characters that had been granted life. Like the burger joint, even the buildings had begun to transform. The roller coaster that made its way about the park writhed and twisted like a Chinese dragon. Wow, a tall, imposing Ferris wheel. Aoko and Sojiro stared, dumbfounded by the Ferris wheel, which had grown to over 250 feet in height. What? 250 feet? You mean that one of the cars are just like the size of a... I don't know, like... size of a building? Is that what you're saying? Or like a size of a house? Hordes of breadmen closed in on them as if to offer tickets. Mobs of trinkets, actual kickshaws, rampaged the park. Whenever a hole was punched in the envelopment, it was instantly filled. It was a battle of attrition with no end in sight. But that was a matter of course, as there were a few fairy tales with about limited resources.
なんかどうしようもないぞ。こいつら増える一方だ。
スナーク本体を探して。童話の怪物には本体に当たる器物があるの。それさえ壊せば遊園地から出られるはず。
本体ってどんな。
さっき言ったでしょ、童話の怪物は現実にないものだって。今までいなかったおかしなやつとか現実じゃありえないもの、それが本体。
Anything weirder or impossible.
おかしなやつって例えば。
He's gonna
だ
need.
から命のある人形とか空飛ぶゴーカートとか。
Aoko paused her firing for a moment. After saying this out loud, she realized how deep their grave was dug. The amusement park was a treasure trove of fairy tale-esque creatures on any given day. Who could say what was impossible amidst the newly transfigured knickknacks running around?
そっか、おかしくないやつなんて一つもないんだ。この中に紛れ込んでる。
Hoping that she was wrong, Aoko bit her bottom lip. Flat Snark was the type of ploy that deployed bounded fields. Seeing as it was commanding so many familiars, it would not be unusual for its main body to have little or even no defenses. Furthermore, if it was modeled from a story about it being untouchable and unidentifiable, it would be logical to assume that it would collapse in itself shortly after being discovered.
逆に言えば、見つければ私たちの勝ち。そんな脆いやつが雑魚に紛れ込む。木の葉を隠すなら森の中って言うけど。
Hide a leaf is in the woods. Damn, she demolished that train! This was closer to the truth than Aoko realized. As long as there was the slightest possibility of it being hit by one of Aoko's stray bullets, it would not dare appear in front of him. Its true form was orchestrating the park from somewhere safe.
でも、どこかに見えているはず。スナークは本の主題だもの。常にページのどこかにいないと主人公の資格がない。
But where? Put very simply, the Ferris wheel was the safest location in the park, as well as a symbol of its past glory. Perhaps?
あの子を捕まえるのは。
Her eyes opened wide at the sudden suggestion. While Aoko had been trying to come up with a plan to overcome this stalemate, it seemed Sojiro had been racking his brain as well. His proposal was a simple one. If they could not find the Snark, they just needed to take out its master Alice. I mean, it's like the obvious approach. Alice had not moved at all from the clock tower. Even from here, they could make out her figure draping in moonlight.
それは一番ダメ。アリスを殺してもフラットスナークは止まらないし、このトンデモが外に溢れ出すことになる。大体私じゃあの子を殺せないから、よくて半殺しがいいところ。
Halfway. The breadman, angered at the insults hurled towards his master, moved to attack and was mercilessly burned to a crisp. Gee, sensitive much? The two stood back to back, catching their breath. Back to back again. With no plan to speak and no route of escape, they had reached rock bottom. Meanwhile, the oddities were forming a circle around their prey, as if they smelled blood in the water. Were they to be dragged into a bakery for the oven, minced in the meat grinder at the butcher shop, skewered and paraded around the top of the carousel, walked the plank of a thorny pirate ship? After 2 years of slumber, they were eager to welcome their new guests. Oh, are we seeing their point of view now?
一応聞いておきたいんだけど。
何？手短にね。今考え事してるから。
ああ、あの連中が何をしたいか嫌っていうほど伝わってくるんだけど、それってあの子の趣味なのかな？
Is that the question he's asking? Is there really a point of that?
その疑問はなかったわ。連中の人間嫌いは遊園地の怨念とフラットスナークの性格じゃない。基本的にまともなやついないから、アリスの使い魔って。あ、でも。
Is that like a hint? Aoko was unable to deny that there were some similarities. Thing's hatred of human comes from a deep-seated grudge within the park itself.
それは結構。それで青崎の考え事って止める方法考えついたのか？
期待させて悪いけどお手上げ。ま、あんたが殺されれば止まるでしょうけど。
それは嫌だ。とりあえず逃げよう。
え、しずきくん？
Oh, so now he's pulling her. She blinked in surprise at the sudden turn of events. Sojiro, who had until now been meekly following her, her lead, had grabbed Aoko's hand and pulled her with him with a head-on charge at the swarm of bread in an attempt to break out the encirclement. Did he just charge in like a bull? Aoko nonetheless followed Sojiro's uncharacteristically gung-ho lead, cursing him all the while. Alone, he had no chance of breaking through the surrounding wall of enemies with brute force. Yet he managed to do it! Aoko regained her bearings and let fly a spray of magic bullets followed ahead of Sojiro. They burst through the net and ran as hard as they could. At this point, all that was left to do was that they had planned from the outset to get out of the park, but not before addressing what needed to be addressed. Aoko could not begin to comprehend Sojiro's reaction. Yes, this is this, and this is that, and this. That was that, and this is this. The old saying. Though she wondered what was getting her so worked up, Aoko did not stop. She told herself that the degree of Sojiro's stupidity, charging the breadmen so recklessly, had caused her to lose her cool. So he has a specific choosing to kill of murderer. I just don't want to be killed by that girl. I don't even know what she looks like, nor he doesn't want a stranger to kill her, to kill him. Is that the idea? It was like someone had doused water over her blazing fury. Aoko's anger was snuffed out by the absurd simplicity of his reasoning. Could it be that Sojiro did not mind being killed by someone as long as he had met them? Aoko grimaced as she followed him. From her spot atop the clock tower, the girl observed the growth of her familiar. Flat Snark, savior of the discarded. It was a vile, vulgar fairy tale monster who provided those abandoned by fate with a glimmer of hope before snatching it away. Alice had it under control, but she was still keen to keep the Snark from expressing its bad habits. Bad habits? You're making it sound like it has consciousness. After completing a lap around the park that had now reached the size of an entire town, the robin made its situation report. I mean, isn't that like the same plan as usual? It seemed Aoko was prioritizing the safety of the boy. Even if it resulted in wasting an entire day, choosing not to capitulate on a decision was very much like her. Oh, she was expecting that to happen? Just to target the caster? The bluebird cheeped in response. Was it denying its master portrait of Aoko? Or agreeing that it was Aoko's style to do exactly that? I mean, the bird reported her, right? How could she understand that but not understand this? An outsider might interpret it as interjections either way. The robin jumped at being addressed so unexpectedly. It chirped and flapped its wing like a frustrated servant, frantic to say otherwise. You're talking to a friggin' bird. She's gonna grow something in size, huh? Is it something that Aoko mentioned something bizarre? Is she gonna use it now? Calmly, she pulled out a small object from her pocket. It was a dark gray Easter egg, and emanating from inside it was the ticking of a clock. The Robin knew it would be Ploy Kickshaw with a bad attitude far exceeding Flat Snark's, known to be among the best in one-on-one situations.
行ってらっしゃい。たたえる時間は20分に設定したわ。いつも通り控えめに壊れてきて。
And together with the witch's breath, the egg filled with praise disappeared. So 20 minutes is the limit of that egg. Suddenly, a strong wind swept through the park. The words, "I could have killed them all by myself," floated through the air. It was the disappointment of something enormous that was visible to all, yet overlooked. Aoko and Sojiro continued their dash toward the boundary separating the park from outside. The curio horde that stood in their way had reduced in number. The iron fence that separated the two from the outside world was just over 300 yards away. Fortunately, there were no particularly large buildings barring their path. If the Ferris wheel had stood in their way, that would have spelled the end, but thankfully, it had yet to reach its full strength. Yet. The only things that appeared before them were weak oddities that could easily be handled by Aoko's simple magecraft. She would have said make it to the fence, if only her lungs would allow it. Since Aoko was using the ample mana filling the park, her tank of magical energy was nearly full. Moreover, the condition of her body's circuits were steadily improving, to the extent that she would be able to unleash at least one all-out onslaught. Oh, it's here. Until something unusual was hovering above her field of vision. It was locked on Sojiro, hovering 10 feet above him over to one side.
しずきくん、ちょっと。
ああ、さっきからついてきてる。
Sojiro had seemingly noticed it before Aoko, hence his previous awkward glances toward the sky. In truth, it would have been stranger for him not to notice, as the thing was practically glued to him. In terms of its size, the floating object measured about 3 feet in diameter. Tiles covered the exterior, above which a multitude of spinning lights danced about. Sojiro asked, not really sure what to call it.
卵って言ったら割れる卵。
Is that the simple logic you found? Her bullets bounced off like it was made of rubber. The trait, the ability to deflect all outside interference, confirmed to Aoko that this thing was undoubtedly a ploy kickshaw.
やっぱり外からのルールじゃ壊れないか。しずきくん、あれから絶対に目をそらさないで。いい。何があっても見続けること。視界の隅に入れとくだけでいいから。
ああ。
Aoko picked up her pace as she barked orders. The Eggman who sat on the wall. He would crack just as the tale spoke of. Oh yeah, Humpty Dumpty. Nothing anyone could do or say would cause him to fall, but the moment they stopped looking, he would tumble down to break into pieces.
いわく、王様の軍隊でも元に戻せない数の破片。
All the king's horses and all the king's men could put him Humpty Dumpty back together again. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. If Sojiro was its target, then the moment he averted its gaze, it would tumble and explode.
爆発するかどうかは知らないけど。
Either way, it was going to scatter something troublesome when it fell. Its oval shape, the keyhole adorning the front, and writing inscribed upon it, they all made her anxious. If it was an egg, that meant it was going to hatch at some point. Even if he continued his stare, once the time came for whatever was inside to come out, they would have even less ability to conserve their energy.
青崎、早すぎないか。あまり全力で走ると。
後のことは考えないで。いいからしずきくんは卵だけに集中して。
At this critical juncture, breadmen stepped out to join the egg and block their path.
邪魔！
The breadmen were marching forth in a grand battalion. At her level of firepower, Aoko should have easily mowed them down, however. Wow, they're real. Wow, They're starting to get hard, huh? If Snap failed to do the job, that meant it was time for her to put her crest to use. Draw a formula-triggered bullet encased in a full wind jacket. Is it full wind or is it full wind? If her previous shots were the equivalent of a machine gun volley, then this was her artillery shot. Jesus! The hard crust bread that absorbed her snap without a dent scattered into thousands of tiny pieces at her draw's torrent. Even Sojiro was freaked out. Whoa. Wait, shouldn't you be looking at the egg? Of course, the destruction did not end with just the bread man. What had once been a brick road was now thoroughly stripped of its pavement. The nearby stalls had been warped into twisted steel skeletons. It was a spectacle that made Sojiro question what the greater obstacle to their escape was, the wall of bread men, or Alco's ability to lay waste to the things.
ちょっとなんで距離取るのよそこそばにいないと危ないじゃないほらもっとこっち
Got closer. What is he, her dog or
言っ
something?
とくけどあんたがあいつらに囲まれちゃったらアウトよ私人質とか意味ないタイプだしそもそも区別して撃つとかそういうのできないし
This may have lost sense to Sojiro. He had not fully appreciated the part about hostages, but he got the gist of it.
つまり今はどこであろうと危険なのか
あんたね
Offended though she was by his typical naive response, she could not help but be impressed. Sojiro was a straight arrow through and through. His eyes stayed firmly focused on the egg overhead. Okay, his attention was the egg hadn't broken yet, even amidst the chaos of the melee unfolding before him.
その分なら安心か物分かりは悪いけど一度言われたことはきっちり守るあたりあなたのいいところよね
Like her own personal dog.
そんなことより青崎俺の気のせいならいいんだけどさっきのパン硬くなかったか
まあねあいつら少しずつ強くなってきてるわ大量生産が軌道に乗ったんで今度はクオリティアップをテーマにしたのかもしずきくんでもお察しの通りここからは手強くなっていく一方よあのパンたちでさえ個体差が出てきたみたいだし考えたくないけどそのうちジャム塗ったりレタス乗っけたり果ては合体したりして
Oh god. We're about to face the giant peanut butter jelly sandwich man? Or monster? Though she was joking, her eyes were dead serious. Sojiro shuddered at the thought of the situation growing even more dire.
じゃあそのうちミラーハウスの人形ぐらいに怖くなるのかあいつら
間違いなくねそこまでレアなパンになったら私も自分だけで手一杯になるところでしずきくんああいうのと喧嘩できる
Sojiro shook his head, a look of complete aversion upon his face.
でしょなら急ぎましょういろいろ余裕ないんだから
Alco took a quick deep breath, then began to sprint once again. Far in the distance, through the fog, the iron fence waited, 300 paces away. As long as nothing happened, they would make it there in one piece. Well, as long. Sojiro followed after Alco, holding on to that all too convenient hope. Yes, the all too convenient. Damn, how many save points are there? But hope was something ever fleeting. In fact, it lasted not even 300 yards. The edge of the amusement park may have well been the edge of the world. May have well been the edge of the world. Oh, you have got to be fucking shitting me! Dozens of undulating horizons could be seen, crowding the sky like a giant cloud or a thick curtain, or perhaps groaning lips. It was the end of the road, the outer limit of an outrageous and fantastical realm. So many fences! It's like, why are there so many stairs? And yet, Aoko found it to be much like the last page of an enormous picture book. The sight turned her mind blank. Well, this is about as bad as it gets, she thought. The snark this island despaired had, at last, brought Aoko to her knees as she stared at the swelling border. The park indeed had an end. Even now, as Aoko and Sojiro had expected, a fence divided the amusement park from the residential area neighboring it. It had both doubled in height and been made much sturdier, another hurdle she had foreseen before even laying eyes on it. Expecting it to have been snarkified, Aoko had come prepared to demolish an obstacle or two, but it's been stacked by several of them. But this construction before her went far beyond a mere wall. It was an ocean that separated the underworld from the mortal one. The iron fence was like a restless surging sea. 1 or 2 walls could easily be toppled. Even 10 or 20 could be dealt with one way or another. Between the power left in her body and that which filled the park, pulling out a brave front was within her power. She could fully mobilize her circuits and her crest to point out the burnout of the last-ditch effort, like some reenactment of the parting of the Red Sea. Like Moses!
でもそれで終わり。
Even if a path could be open, she would not have the energy left to walk with it. And it was obvious what would become of her afterward. Residents would hardly forgive her for wreaking such havoc around their park. Like ants drawn to honey, they would swarm the helpless girl and tear her to pieces. Despondent and exhausted, she felt the faint sting of remorse. Escaping the park, looking back on how they had gotten here, Aoko recognized that her choices had been her undoing. Under the golden full moon, beams of steel bent emerged like wireframe sculptures. It was only a matter of time before the amusement park itself became one colossal monster. The horde of familiars gathered in the plaza where Alice was had formed an impenetrable blockade around her. Just above the head of the boy, beside her, the whispering egg, called Scratch Dumpty, continued to shuffle what appeared on its surface.
Aozaki.
しずきくん。
The boy's voice snapped Aoko out of her trance. If only for a moment. The stark reality of the situation quickly dawned on the novice mage. The sheer helplessness of it all, as it ripped out and snatched away any she had to resist.
ゲートに行こう。ここはどうしようもないけど、入り口ならもうちょっとマシだろ。フラットスナークだっけ？こいつにもルールがあるって言ったじゃないか。なら、これは役割の問題だ。初めから鉄柵は通れない壁だけど、ゲートなら出入り口として機能しているかもしれない。
Oh, he's thinking clear now, huh? Sojiro had not given in to panic. Aoko found herself honestly admiring Sojiro's ability to analyze Snark's characteristics given the circumstances. Now calm, she stood her resolve.
そうね。確かに門はあると思う。けど、たどり着くのは難しいわ。一番弱かった焼きたてパンですら、今はもうあれだもの。広場や入り口には、もっと上等なのがたむろしてるだろうし、門だって、あの観覧車以上の怪物かもしれない。確か、大きなキッツィちゃんだったでしょ。
青崎はゲートには行かないのか。
So you're not going at front gate?
そう、けど、広場や入り口には、もっと上等なのがたむろしてるだろうし、門だって、あの観覧車以上の怪物かもしれない。確か、大きなキッツィちゃんだったでしょ。正門って。
青崎はゲートには行かないのか。
まあね。それよりこっちの方が現実的だし。
Aoko took another glance at the undulating iron fences. It was too late to achieve their goal of making it out alive. In that case, she decided to prioritize the other promise she had made.
今からこの鉄柵を壊すから、あなたはそこから外に出て。それで、私の役割はおしまいよ。
Though her words were few, her tone told the whole story. She was telling him to escape by himself.
信じられない。こんなの、 青崎だけじゃ壊せないだろ。
私だけならね。でも今はこの遊園地が味方してる。燃料がこれだけあるんだから、私は重心になるだけでいいんだし、一発でかいのお見舞いしてやるわ。ま、それでも一回が限度だから、穴を開けたらあんたには全力で走り抜けてもらうしかないけど。
So she's actually going to So she's actually going to sacrifice herself for the sake of the sole person she was aiming to kill. She would carve a path through this iron sea of fences, gambling on one final effort, a giant incantation to launch the biggest projectile she could manage. As an outsider, Sojiro could not even begin to imagine how much of a burden this would be for her. All he could imagine was a hazy vision of Aoko being left behind in this park. What would happen to her? Would that girl in black come to save her? Cool as it was to imagine, he knew she would not. After Aoko had exhausted her very best in order to save them, that girl would not stay her hand. The only way Alice would let Aoko off the hook was if Aoko killed Sojiro's payment. And so...
20メートルぐらい離れてて、準備に手間取るけど、その卵の表面が茹で上がるまでには終わらせるから。
It went without saying that this was the only path.
待ってくれ。俺を逃がすって言うけど、それに意味はあるのか、青崎。
ないけど、外に出られたところでアリスから逃げ切れるとは思えないし。
Then why do it?
けど、
Why bother?
これぐらいは最後の意地よ。守るって言ったんだから、できるところまでやらないと。
Surprised by her seemingly moral stance, Sojiro saw Aoko in a new light. But of course, Sojiro realized that she was not fighting for her sake, for his sake, but the sake of her pride.
そうだったな。けど、それなら俺だけ逃がすのはらしくないぞ。
何よ、いいから離れてて。
Aoko eased off, just a bit. She recalled how, an hour ago, he had gotten the better of her.
青崎、まだ意地を張れるんなら、他のことをやろう。このお化けみたいな鉄柵を壊せるなら、他に壊すべきものがあるはずだ。
ないわよ。悪いけど、私は目に見えるものしか壊せないの。最後まで形のない希望にすがるとか、考えるのも寒気がする。いい？今はフラットスナークなんかより、この壁を壊してあんたを足抜けさせるのが私の現実。私に負える最大限の責任って。
逃げるのか。
Aoko was just about to turn her back on him when Sojiro clutched her hand. His words caused something inside her to boil with rage. It was as though someone had set her heart on fire. Surprise that pricked upon opened her true feelings and disappointment she felt toward herself thawed her frozen limbs.
誰が逃げるのはそっちで、逃がしてあげるのはこっちだって言うのよ。甘く見ないで。いざとなったら遊園地ごと爆破してみせるわ。
そうか。なら、ここで俺を逃がすのは無駄だな。その気迫は本命のために取っておこう。それまでは俺も手伝うから。
は？手伝う？それこそ無駄な気遣いよ。頭きた。いいから逃げろバカ。だいたい走り詰めで息も絶え絶えなやつなんか使えないわよ。
What a Sunday.
そりゃいい加減ヘトヘトだけど、そういう青崎なんか疲れ以上に傷の方が傷んでるだろ。
Not to mention the injury to her back that Aoko had nearly forgotten about. Oh yeah! The damage inflicted by the doll. Even now, she couldn't ignore the pain that the automaton had inflicted on her spine. With iron will, she managed to push it out of her mind. Mostly.
ほら、魔術とか抜きにすれば、まだ俺の方がマシじゃないか。入り口までおぶっていくことぐらいなら、なんとか。
Probably carry you all the way.
できないことは口にしないで。もういいから言って。慣れているもの、私は。でもあなたは違う。 こういうの初めてでしょ。だからいいの。
The fact that they were a team, well, at least in a short moment, the fact that she would still have to kill him after all this, none of the irony was lost on her as she said these words. It didn't matter anymore. Still, Sojiro didn't let go of her hand. He gripped it even harder. His expression was the same as ever. Aoko frowned, trying to figure out if he was upset with her.
確かにこういうのは初めてだ。けど山じゃ危険な目ぐらい合ってる。鹿に襲われたことだってあるんだぞ、俺は。
Got traumatized by a deer! As a city girl, she had no idea what it meant to be attacked by a deer, but his determination was apparent enough. True. Looking back on it now, he had managed to maintain his composure through it all. A normal person would barely be able to talk through such panic. Perhaps going up deep in the mountains far from civilization had taught him how to stay calm in the face of so much.
だから信じてくれ。少しでいいから。
Just a little, huh? He spoke his plain, unadulterated feelings and released his hand. There was no lie in him. In fact, he was too honest, so much that she found it hard to believe him. Sojiro had no reason to go that far. As it stood, Aoko had no future. After confessing this and telling him to escape, why had this boy still offered to help a person like her? Well, I don't know, because he's a weirdo, and that he's some sort of those dim-witted protagonist thing, even though he's technically not a protagonist.
わからない。どうしてそこまでするの？私に付き合えばあなたは死ぬのよ。これが最後だからちゃんと考えてよね。あなたはここで逃げるべきよ。
それはわかるよ。でも行かない。
Sojiro answered immediately, realizing that Aoko was looking for his reason. This level of insight, and Sojiro demanded a round of applause.
そうすると青崎が死んでしまいそうだ。
His words were as irrational as always.
だからどうしてそこまでするのよ、あんたは。
She was yelling out of frustration. After thinking for a moment, Sojiro replied.
そりゃ君が好きだからだろ。
Oh my god, he actually gone through that. Oh, he actually gone. Did he actually throw that out just like that? Like, seriously? Like, I mean, this is like the tip of the iceberg, bro. Like, come on, man. You just met her. Like, Jesus. Like, why would you... A confession of all things when they're about to die. Oh... I hope it's... I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I don't know whether it's like some family feeling or some romantic feeling. I don't know, but he's actually throwing it out. He's actually throwing it out just like that. Simple and to the point. But I do appreciate his bluntness. I do appreciate it. His face seemed to ask why she would even question him so. There was a pause, no more than 2 seconds. His surprise attack had stopped Aoko in her tracks. Alice was not the only one who had an ace up her sleeve. That line reached deeper even than Flat Snark could ever hope to. Wow, a confession that's more powerful than Flat Snark? Jesus. All Aoko could respond was with an expression of pure shock. It was a simple, stubborn reason, the strongest kind on Earth. Sojiro Shizuki was indeed incomprehensible to be able to work unconditionally with someone who was trying to kill him. But she felt as though she'd finally grasped a sliver of his true nature. Tobimaru and the others' assessment of him was correct, as vexing as it was her to admit.
バカね。私はあなたのこと嫌いなのに。
He laughed at her sour grumbling. At this point, he was used to her insults. Their clash of wills ended here. She didn't even rejected him? Isn't that like a... Aoko's blood ran hot from her blazing heart. If he was going to make a face like that, all she could do was try to think of a way to get them both home.
私だって逃げっぱなしは性に合わないし。いいわよ。最後まで粘ってみる。それにしずきくんが付き合ってくれるなら、何かの役には立つでしょ。
We? Though her tone had lightened, there was still hesitation in her eyes. It was only natural. Aoko had not even a clue as to how to begin to fight the snark. If only she had been just a bit more skilled or had trained just a bit more, there might have been some way to look for it.
我ながら情けない。せめて正体を暴く手がかりでもあればいいんだけど。
I need to go pee. Okay, I'm back. Unconsciously, she let her apprehension show. Sniffling was pointless. She would just have to figure out by herself, but...
なんだ、正体さえ分かればいいのか?
That's all we need to figure out. Uncle gave him a look as if to ask what that was supposed to mean.
いや、だからおかしなものはどれかってことだろ?
Look for something weird, right? Sojiro also made a face that suggested she should have brought it up sooner.
わかるのあんた。
多分。いや、結構前から気になっていたんだけど。
Thinking about it for a while. Sojiro whispered in her ear quietly so as not to be overheard. It was certainly unexpected, but then again, equally obvious. After he explained the mistake, she knew right away that he was correct. At last, she had an inkling of Flat Snark's original form, namely... Close to its climax, huh? 10... Oh, so that was a time lapse of 10 minutes of planning. Even though that the breads are just surrounding them between the layered gates and the breadmen. For 10 minutes, and they're not even closing in on them. After deliberating the Snark's true form and figuring out a plan of attack, the two exchange nods in acceptance of their roles.
それじゃあ、ここからは別行動ね。でも、ミラーハウスの時みたいなのは勘弁してよ。この作戦の肝はあなたなんだから。開始1分でドジったら、本当に打つ手なしだからね。
Yeah, he couldn't memorize what the circles, what the fifth circle was supposed to be. Though she jabbed him for his previous failure as a decoy, her voice was bright. Aoko's original vigor had returned to her at Sojiro's discovery of the truth. Meanwhile, Sojiro was also getting serious in his own way. He took Aoko's warning to heart.
ならいいけど。いい？さっきと立場は反対よ。
Oh, so Sojiro is going offensive?
失敗したら死ぬのは私じゃなくてそっち。もうフォローに回れないから、できるだけ慎重にね。
分かってる。今更ながらやっぱりさっき逃がしてもらえばよかったと思うぐらい慎重だ。
Sojiro nodded, telling her to leave it to him. Though he made it sound like he was holding a grudge, it seemed to him to be the only way of showing her his resolve. Alco let out a sigh of defeat. Once more, she couldn't figure him out.
ほんと、大バカなんだか大物なんだか。でも任せた。期待してるわ。でも任せた。期待してるわ、しずきくん。
She had wanted to say that she believed in him, but apparently that was too embarrassing for her. Sunday. Alco turned away from Sojiro and began to run. She had begun to think that maybe this change of pace was not so bad after all. And so ended the intermission. The young cast members were handed their new lines. Whatever happened next? The Night of Witches at long last entered its climax. We've been going at it for 2 hours? She was filled with foreboding at the Robins' report. Apparently they had gone in opposite directions. The park's residents had set off after the boy witness, and it would take them mere minutes to capture him, so the bird said.
どういうこと？追いかけているのは本当に彼？青子が変装しているのではなく。
How could Aoko be in disguise after all of this chase? The robin flapped its wings, chirping away any doubt. It had seen them with its own 2 eyes. Aoko was heading for the plaza, while the cocky brow was making a run for the roller coaster.
青子が彼を見捨てた？そんな簡単なことならいいけど。ダンプティは彼に張り付いているの？
Oh, so it is Dumpty. It didn't know about the other birds, but with its superior night vision, it had seen that sucker clearly because he had moved to a high point.
ダンプティはなんて？最後まで歌わせろ。こんな褒め殺したい間抜けはまたとない。ですって。
Let him sing to the very end that he may never get the chance again to do so for a fool this asinine? Who's he? Who's she referring to? Sojiro? Or Dumpty? Scratch Dumpty was a ticking time bomb that would drop and detonate the moment his target averted its gaze. Ah, so Arco was right on the mark. That is, as long as his target continued to observe him. In a way, he was gentlemanly ploy kickshaw, though Alice wished he would forego such necessity when in battle.
そうね。視線を切らないだけでは、ダンプティからは逃げられない。表面の死が完成すれば扉が開く。彼がどこまで逃げようと、あと少しでダンプティがしまってくれるわ。
Until the park, or rather the Snark, was destroyed, Sojiro would not be able to escape. Which meant the larger concern was Aoko. Aoko had promised to protect the boy, which begged the question, where was she running to?
ここにいる限り、青子の動向はつかめない。
Alice looked out over the park, ignoring the robin's attempt to get her attention with its plumage. Flat Snark had nearly reached its full size. It was a different breed of beast compared to the other cheap ploys. To her, it was one of her 3 most irreplaceable and precious familiars.
そうね。任せたわスナーク。青子が諦めない以上、あなたも手は抜かないで。
She mentioned that their roles are reversed, so Aoko is being the bait. Alice remained where she was, with the same historical merit as the troll under the bridge and the poison-clawed reptile. Flat Snark was one of Alice's ultimate ploys. She was placing her trust in its reputation and ability. How typical for a noble class mage.
でも忘れないで。これはゲームよ。勝敗がついたのなら、私のところに帰ってきて。
Is she saying that to her Flat Snark? Drifting fog ignored its master's words. It was the one thing that Alice had misread. Flat Snark was a king, even among the other ploys of terrible, vulgar antics. Death to the defeated, gruesome tragedy to the vanquished. It found no pleasure unless it brought about dramatic ruination of life and wealth. Clark billowed like a wicked laughter. After all, only a king had the right to decide the fate of the vanquished, and Snark's greed could not be contained. Oh, so he's not backing down, huh? Thus, it hadn't even the slightest intent to play fair, despite its master's orders. Over 100 feet high, one careful step at a time, the figure made its way gingerly up the track which stretched into the heart of the amusement park. One small step on the moon, one giant leap for mankind. I don't know, it's kind of the quote that's getting me after I read that. He stayed his beating chest and pounding of his breath. Even tiny movements were an obstacle to his progress. Amazingly, the one making this pale face advance higher and higher was Sojuro Shizuki. Far below, he saw that a horde of bread creatures had congregated by the roller coaster platform. As they bustled this way and that, their numbers continued to increase by the minute, seemingly cheering on Sojuro with raised arms as he made his ascent. Or rather, they jeered as if beckoning him to come down. Of course, neither did Sojuro, but his current state was the lesser of two evils. The only thing that followed him now was the floating egg. After heaving a huge sigh, Sojuro bent forward a bit and climbed the track that inclined toward the heavens. 150 feet now. If this were a skyscraper, he would be on the 16th floor. Wait, how big is a floor on a skyscraper? A strong gust of wind whipped through his hair. Humans had an instinctual fear of heights. In particular, a place like this, which called forth visions of falling into one's death, would cause a person's knees to tremble against their will. It was an instinct that forewarned death, urging its master to return to the safety of the ground. It was a reasonable reaction. Climbing the roller coaster tracks went far beyond funny stories and into the realm of fantasy. Yeah, like no normal person would fear of heights climbing on the roller coaster, except the builders. I guess builders aren't afraid of the height of roller coasters since they're the one that built it. The strong winds and change in air pressure were a hindrance. His instincts screamed at him to stop, causing his limbs to go numb, his muscles to go limp, and his mind to race. Even if he had been tied to a lifeline, a mere 15 feet of climbing would still cause his thoughts to freeze out of sheer terror. It would only get worse from here, exponentially so. Every foot forward increased the load on both his mind and his body by another degree. Oh, it's nice that he in the same position with the same face, and to cover it up with the railroad tracks. Very clever on covering it. Burden on his mind notwithstanding, he carefully measured the toll on his body with every step. His legs, which had carried him running this far, threatened to buckle the moment he let down his guard. This fatigue was likely why Aoko had stressed that Sojuro's role was more dangerous than hers. Is it really that important to think about it? Sojuro laughed as he stared at the floating egg. He reflected on the course of events that had led to this absurd situation. Not even 10 minutes ago, they had been engaged in conversation. Oh, backtrack? Oh, we're backtracking on the plan? Sojuro felt a shudder travel down his spine at Aoko's smug grin. Ooh, that is really not a good thing. In hindsight, I would have been more than happy at this point to make him do something absurd.
どう壊すかって、それなら
Soldier wondered aloud from what he had seen. Alco had enough firepower to tear clean through the fence. He refrained from speculating about Flat Snark's true form because he felt there was nothing they could do about it, even if they knew. But that had changed. For Aoko, the impossible was quite literally within their grasp.
そうでもないわ。私の目算だとあと50メートル分ギリギリで届かない。
Despair filled Soldier's eyes. Oh, he was looking at the roller coaster. Aoko lifted a hand to her long hair, in which a magically charged fingertip clipped a clean tuft of it.
足りない分は努力と根性ってね。
Elbow
あな
grease.
たはできるだけ高いところまで逃げて。頃合いを見て合図を出すから。そうしたらこれを空に放ってくれる？しずきくんの役目はそれだけでいいから。
She gave him a magical infused hair. Based on where Aoko pointed her gaze, she did not really mean to leave it up to Sojiro to pick the highest place he could find. She was staring conspicuously at one of the amusement park's two main attractions, the roller coaster.
つまり青崎とは別行動をとってあの怪物たちに追われながら高いところに逃げ込めと。
Uh-huh.
そういうこと。ほら、あのうねうね動き出してるコースターのレールとかよくない？
Wow. She's putting on a smug face despite the situation here. Despite their dire, there were two demons in this park. Her smile made even Sojiro want to respond that was far from perfect. Yeah. Yeah, you could tell from now you can feel what Tobimaru had endured through all of Aoko's antics.
疑いたくはないんだが、本当はあの子とグルで俺を遠回しに殺そうとしてるんじゃないか。
あら、私に殺されるのならいいんでしょ？
人の出現を悪用するのは良くないと思う。
Why is he wanting about that now? Sojiro hung his head. This was not sane. What? Not sane even though you're running away from all these imaginary mascots coming to life about to eat or kill you? If he did as she said, he would die from exhaustion before Kitsy even had a chance to eat him.
私だって鬼じゃないわ。ほら、こっち向いて。
Oh yes, an Oni.
おまじないかけてあげる。
Cast a charm. What charm? It was the lightest of touches. Close enough for their breath and skin to come in contact. Ooh. Would you look at this? Even the music box is playing. He finished in a hushed voice. For one of them, this was rather mundane magecraft. For the other, it was a head-spinning, intimate ambush. Oh, it is.
弱く、うまく、早く。
The tremble of one's breast. Be light and frail, nimble and
チク
fast.
タクチクタク。急げや急げ。
Light lags behind while shadows pull ahead. Words that could not be produced by a normal larynx, carrying a peculiar weight to them, reverberated against his eardrums. If words were given colors, these would have been the color of her name, blue. Ah. Sojiro's exhausted body, burning blood gently cooled. Ah, so it's like a psychological alleviation magecraft.
飛ぶ、泳ぐ、駆け抜ける。チクタクチクタク、汽笛を鳴らせ。
Stuffed doubt and anxiety in a sack. Begin the journey at dawn. It kind of gives me the feeling that she's singing a lullaby in a bedtime story.
星はいつでも北の空。どこまでも、いつまでも。
It feels like she's calming the child to his sleep. like the mother, like a mother chanting a lullaby to her child to go to sleep. I think that's the kind of feeling I'm getting. In reality, it took but a few seconds. With the sudden contact, I felt a little longer.
よし、暗示成功したはず。ここまで手応えがあったの初めてだし。
This is the first time.
アリスの小言もたまには役に立つじゃない。
Really? She heard Alice's lectures, but not that specific star details? A very merry Aoko stood aside a very confused Sojiro. After he asked what the heck had occurred, she responded.
簡単な暗示よ。一時的に恐怖心を消しておいたから、高いところに登っても平気なはず。
Oh yeah, you see? Psychological negation.
あの手の作業で一番足を引っ張るのは同様でしょ。恐怖も何も感じなければ、地上何メートルだろうと平均台とそう変わらないってわけ。
Which one is he shocked about? The shock of the logic behind that magecraft, or that touch? He seemed to get it. It actually all sounded like Greek to Sojiro, but he accepted it as an explanation for his strange actions.
やっと着いた。
He finally made it! He'd arrived at the summit of the track. From nearly 200 feet high, Sojiro had a bird's eye view of the entire amusement park. He was able to spot Aoko's figure right away. In the plaza not so far from here, she seemed to be occupied with something conspicuous. Her surroundings lay still. The breadmen were still busy trying to figure how to reach Sojiro by trial and error from the roller coaster's entrance. They were over 300 feet away now.
汗をかくはずだ。こんなに移動したのか。
A strong winter gales quickly dried the sweat on his brow, but he was drenched underneath his shirt. This much sweat was worth at least a half-mile run, not to mention all the scares he had experienced throughout the night.
でもよかった。あとは合図を待つだけだ。
He felt a wave of relief. Yeah, he's finally finished climbing, but not at the thought of Aoko destroying the snark in this nice Mirrors Park. He was simply happy he could repay a bit of his debt from the House of Mirrors. Oh, signal already? A blue bullet rose from the plaza where Aoko was located.
合図だ。
Sojiro stood up atop the tracks, pulled out the pouch he had stowed in his pocket, and tossed it forward. Without any regard for his questionable footing, he gave it a mighty overarm pitch. The small pouch drew a parabolic curve in Aoko's direction, quickly becoming untied in midair. Strands of blue hair. Inside the bag was a lock of her hair and a small stone weight.
高いところから風に乗せてくれれば、あとは何とかするから。
Aoko had said, but it was Sojiro's effort that had set the plan in motion. The tuft of hair remained airborne, drifting as if watching over its owner. Sojiro's job was done. He remained concerned about the egg hovering over him, but there was nothing he could do about it. Sojiro breathed a sigh of relief and leaned forward to watch the rest of the plan unfold. Then,
むむ。
in the corner of his eye, he thought he spotted something familiar approaching Aoko. Oh, god damn it.
ルート、セット。
Oh, she's making a ritual.
ディレクト、1層、2層、予備に3層。
You know, it's kind of nice that there's like a three-dimensional scope just rotating around the scene.
魔力提供、体現に固定。循環よし、射角よし、術式安定、大まかよし。
Pattern began to carve itself into a brick street. Is she like forming a nuke spell? casting of an unprecedented incantation with unprecedented range. Keeping the rising tension contained within her chest, the fledgling mage snapped her fingers.
決めた。ツアープラン、スターマイン。
She kneeled at the center of the formula and raised her head to the night sky. Not even a glimpse of the transmogrified fantasy land around her entered her vision now. Only one thing, one untouchable thing was reflected in her blue eyes.
実はずっと気になっていたことが。
This is how their conversation started a few minutes prior. Oh, are we about to see what the weakness was? Soldier will begin with a simple statement of fact. In truth, it really was the simplest of discrepancies. Any difference between the reality of an hour ago and the illusion of the present was both infinitesimal, and infinite.
雲があったから勘違いしたんだろうけど。
Oh, the clouds? It was hiding in plain sight. Too impossible to be real, too outlandish to be here. In this amusement park where every paradigm had shifted, something was brazenly flaunting its normalcy. The moon?
今夜は新月なんだ、青崎。
Oh, so it was the moon. Wait, how could he know that tonight is the new moon?
思えば、初めっからその形だったものね、あんたは。
The distance from the Earth to the moon was 238,900 miles. If it truly was identical to the action moon, then this monster indeed lived up to its eerie reputation. At a distance that vast, there would have been no need to hide. It could flaunt its true form for all to see. But if it had its true form, that meant it was vulnerable. The monster's camouflage implied that it sat within the reach of human hands.
こっちの最大射程はよくて600ってところだけど。
At this point, it was time to give it all she had. Isn't her role as bait? Drawing on the energy surging throughout the park, she extended her firing arm. Ah, so the lock of hair was an indication of a target. A blue firework launched onto the air. Looking up at her hair dancing in the wind above, Aoko reached out her right hand as if to catch the night sky. Mage's own body made for the perfect catalyst. And for a female mage, the hair she had grown out over many years made for a particularly valuable and powerful source of fuel. To use it, all she had to do was apply her will. She locked the fingers on both her hands together and shouted.
三層展開全術式連結起動
The large artillery cannon? She hurled forth a clear challenge to bind the moon to herself. Ah, so it is a lock-on. The mist began to whirl about in a vortex. The monster high above bore its fangs at the sight of the blue spell that appeared in midair.
見抜かれたです
By the time Alice had noticed the change, the hostility between Aoko and the Snark was palpable.
そうなら青子の勝ちよすぐに戻りなさい確かに雨雲を消したのはヒントの上げすぎだけどそれぐらいは多めに見てスナーク
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work. The fog continued to thicken with no sign of abating. The moon that floated in the night sky could not pardon such an insolent mage. As if the Lord of the Night would bow down to such impudence, there was no staying its wrath at a challenge so flagrant.
スナーク
The robin swooped in to give its report, but Alice waved it away. Her gaze was fixed on the transforming golden moon. Yes, your irreplaceable familiar had turned against you. Her calls of restraint did not reach it. This fairy tale monster was beholden to nobody, and it would have no qualms of unleashing its vast might upon its puny prey. The core of her magic bullet howled. The magic circuits within her body spun. Aoko fed the magical energy, scorching her nerves with imaginary flame. She was linked to the formula inscribed on the ground. The spell was read and executed the same as it always was, but its output was beyond reckoning. With this much firepower, even this mundane process would invite injury upon its caster. It was enough to burn up the nerves that were acting as a barrel. The imaginary heat had reached a terrifying temperature. Aoko trembled at this endless feeling, but would have to grin and bear it lest their efforts come to naught. Aoko could no longer move. And she's straight up going in glass cannon now, huh? When she had learned the Snark's true form from Sojiro, he gave up on any superiority a movable turret offered, instead opting to become a stationary cannon. That was the only way she could reach it. It was impossible to hunt the Snark unless she anchored her crest at this location and angle. It kind of reminds me of the Black Barrel. At the same time, this action revealed that she was out of options. Once the fuse was lit, she would have no choice but to fight to the bitter end. Aoko took a deep breath. This was the way she wanted it. Her preparations were complete. She would be able to deliver this maelstrom magical energy directly to the moon, like a rocket payload. The third layer served as a cannon's muzzle and sight. It would fire the magical energy once it reached critically, and allowed Aoko to adjust the angle of fire. The moon became warped within her scope. God damn it! As Aoko charged her magical energy, the ploy displayed its golden form as if to mock her. Come, worship the heavens, powerless scions of an innocent bloodline. For there it was, a point among the otherworldly sky. A mystical visage, obfuscated by jade mist and azure clouds. Called the greatest treasure known to the world of magecraft. A rarity more valuable than an entire kingdom. Crown Phantasm. Why does that name sound familiar? Ah, it started revealing its true form now, eh? Set apart from the first, the world's greatest fabrication. Her instinct screamed at her to delay no further. This fairy tale monster was the greatest of its kind, and was about to expose its true form. Its open hostility made it clear that it was ready to counterattack. She had to shoot down first. Magical energy was at 80%. Formula was operating normally, all that was left to pull the trigger, but calm voice inside her head asked if that was really okay. She had one shot at this, and there was no going back. It was a bout of precision with no room for miscalculations. Even a tenth of a second of hesitation could tip the scales. Was she ready for the pain? Was she ready to deal with the fallout if she missed? Could she really even take down the moon with such a tiny bullet in the first place? Her eyes, fixed upon the moon, were filled with determination. She knew that the moment she fired, the intense recoil would overwhelm her entire body. Still, she shouted. With every ounce of spirit she possessed, she fired her ultra-long-range projectile into the sky. Kind of a long name. A large Grand Canyon. Cannon. The third layer embraced the magic bullet fired from the surface of the earth. The crest, an extension of Aoko's self, unleashed light to pierce the moon. However... Oh, come on! Don't tell me there's a drawback! Oh, you fucking ass bitch! You dirty little bastard! An enormous blue canopy pulverized the beam. It returned the ether that 30,000 degree flame to nothing as it came in contact with the bullet. The recoil of the Grand Magecraft literally boiled her blood. Her body couldn't handle it. Her heart stopped. Her brain went numb from the pain and impact. Her nerves putrefied from end to end. Her magic crest revived them all by force. Even though her vision had gone white, she could still see it. Swallowing the blood in her mouth, Aoko looked up with a scowl. There it was, an enormous shield of ice and sneering, deformed skull. There was no time to think or hesitate. The magical energy throughout the park began to gather. Aoko knelt. Across from the tyrannical face of the moon, she intuited that the ice had yet to fully form. Flat Snark still hadn't reached its full strength, which was exactly why. By accelerating the spell, Aoko damaged her own body. The burden of linking the formula to Snark caused intense pain. All she could do was grit her teeth and endure it. So she could cast it with the body, but the body can't compensate. All because Aoko had got a read on to their relative strengths. Even if its volume of magical energy was identical, Snark's form, its mystic scale, was in a different league. Aoko could charge her energy to her absolute limit, and that would barely make a dent in the ice wall. Meanwhile, there's nothing she could do to prevent her own annihilation if the Snark gathered as much energy as it could. She loaded her next shot. She issued orders to a floating third layer. Ignoring the toll on her body, she began to accelerate the fourth layer formula. The role of her right-hand single layer was to absorb and store surrounding magical energy. The thick fog that drifted through the park was an ancient ether spewed out by Flat Snark's own body. But Aoko could not pour it into her formula. Injecting all that thing into her veins. Aoko's body, which had integrated within the formula, took on an amount of magical energy that far surpassed its maximum capacity. Seethed in agony, or rather it trembled in delight. For a mage, magical energy was a propellant to reach the realm of mystics. The expansion of internal time, the liquefaction of the self, the release from the physical. They were all what one might call near-death experience. Or at the precipice of what lay beyond, Aoko stood firm and faced reality. Even with all that injury, still, reality had come to break her will. The gap between them was plain to any observer. The gun barrel named Aoko Ozaki had not a chance to chip away at that lump of ice. She accelerated the spell further. Skull grinned. That ice was no shield. It was a hammer to crush the mages who did not know their place. Moon laughed as it prepared to crush not just Aoko, but the boy atop the roller coaster, as well as the park in its entirety. Oh, she's reeling it in. Her circuits were on the verge of going critical. Her body had been charged with scorching power supply from her fingertips to her eyeballs. She would see the bullet fired. She would arrange the matrix formula as quickly as her nerves, transmission speed would allow. A single attack was not enough. There was no way to shoot it from its flank. Which meant there was only one solution. Oh, changing the chamber? The third layer began to transform. Switched from direct to alternating current. The spell's supposed strong point was its ability to adjust its trajectory mid-flight, but right now all she wanted was numbers. Direct to alternating current. Reminds me of Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Firing again in multi-shots. Damn! Hit it! Oh, it's a scatter shot! A blue sun shining down upon the amusement park. Beams of light at maximum output streaked forth to pierce the golden moon. They're like blue comets. Holding down the trigger, she continued to fire, taking in energy ad infinitum. Blue flames shot forth at critical level, overloading, but the ice would neither melt nor mar. No amount of sheer heat could make a dent in something formed from such a colossal amount of magical energy. The toll on her circuit sent them berserk, and blood began to run free. The battle had become a tussle over the magical energy that filled the park. From the very beginning, this had been Snark's home turf. Snark had control for over at least 80% of the space, while Alco had 20 at best. Man, this fucking bastard. The castle of fights descended as if to call the match. All she could do was delay the inevitable. She knew that she had been backed into a wall, and right now the only thing she could do was keep firing. Then again, perhaps not. There was another option. If she converted all her magical energy into defense, there was a tiny chance. No, not tiny. A great possibility, in fact, that she could shave just her. Clinging to that broken oak. Okay. Clinging to that broken hope, Alco continued to rotate her circuits. Time seemed to stop at the magical energy overdose. A second of intense pain lasted an eternity. Then, amidst everything, something approached one step at a time. Something from among the park's shadows. Something. The Red Death? She felt goosebumps from head to toe. The issue was no longer the ice overhead. In the midst of this stillness, the Red Death drew closer, step by ominous step. Her circuits in her mind began to rupture out of terror. The composition of her formula and soul began to rip apart. There it was, just behind her. Its footsteps came to a halt. It reached around and cupped her face in its blood-stained hands. She wanted to scream out with all her might. This is it. Nothing matters. I couldn't care less. Run or don't run, it doesn't matter. Quit hiding and reveal yourself. Use whatever you can and show no mercy. That was it. She had one final card to play. Once, a miracle had been gifted to her, almost as a joke. It made the ice look like child's play. That was what the Red Death had come to kill. Using it would spell ruin. Not using it would mean death by ice. Then why hesitate? There were no conditions on its use. There was no price to pay for its power. She simply would cease to be herself. That was all. Humans love to exist in areas of gray. Dozens of electrical impulses disconnect the brain every minute. Nothing lasts forever, not even oneself. It was not anything particularly worthy of disdain. It was not even anything remarkably worthy to be being called taboo. What escaped her lips now was rage, bewilderment from the red silhouette. The girl let out an inaudible scream. Could true magic truly be her savior? What an opportunistic load of bullshit. After all, to begin with, indeed, Aoko was still in the dark whenever it came to that magic, whatever it was. Oh, did she have a hidden magic that is dormant inside her? I'm impressed he's still calm after all of this. Her lock is broken! What's she gonna do now? She woke from her momentary hallucination. The very illusion of her breaking soul had shown her. Whining had the opposite effect on her. Her pride was now ablaze. Sojiro was right. Her opponent had put her in check, and she had done the same to it. It was clear why she was losing, so now all she indeed needed was a counterplan, well within her abilities. No matter the odds, she was not one to give up without giving it one last shot. Her numb fingers clenched into a tight fist. She was betting against the house, an unreasonable gamble that should have made her question her sanity. She is on the breaking edge, and her first step was off by an inch. Her body could be instantly vaporized. But she knew a boy who never fled. She knew of a steadfast courage that could shine its light, no matter how small, through any desperate situation. Yes, there was more than just herself to be concerned about. If that ice fell, it would mean the destruction of the park in its entirety. Everything he had achieved, everything he had risked and dared and happily put his life on the line for it, would be all for naught. She's saying it again? With such little time gap? Determination and confidence surged through her like electricity. She was in no mood to be crushed by a giant sheet of ice. If she was going to lose, she'd rather do so as the grandest firework possible. Aoko was a sore loser, but at this point, she would rather burn herself to send her sunlight to decide her end. Overloaded magic circuits. She grunted in pain. Energy raged through her body. Her circuits were on the verge of disintegration. Inscribed upon her body, her magic crest was magecraft given physical form. It did not, however, stop with simply skin and flesh. It burrowed to the very marrow of her bones. A playful smile graced her lips. Her sense of reason had been turned upside down by the pain. That was only natural. Damn, she could emit those words in her head from all that excruciating pain. She had to praise her own body for holding out so long while pushed beyond its limits. Skullface noticed the abnormality. It finally recognized the challenge for dominance over this space. It laughed at the conceit it faced. Never did it expect a magician to challenge the Great Flat Snark, Lord of Vessels over a millennium, in such an age of decline. Ah, so that's what the CG looks. She tried to catch her breath. She braced herself with coming pain. It almost feels like that this is the final endgame here. She was going to smash that ice to pieces. Both had access to the same amount of magical energy. One of them was greatly outmatched, but
出力装置に差があった。魔力の吸引、方針の規模で負けているのなら、単純な話、私をでかくするだけでいい。
can you actually make it that fast?
チェンジ、ツアープラン。
Are those twin bullets? The feedback would go beyond anything she had experienced to date. Quite simply, her decision went beyond recklessness. She expanded both formula to its maximum size. The first layer would transform into a giant vortex, swallowing up the mist. The second layer would process it from one end and pump it into her, the barrel.
私の想定が甘かった。撃ち落とすなんて半端もいいとこ。この場合、跡形もなく打ち砕くった。
And she made that shot all on her own. Primeval power answered the spellcaster's conviction. It formed the pattern of a writhing serpent. Voiceless magical power flew a banner of revolution. Now look upon the earth, O venerable one. The first among trailblazers. She embodies a species that knows no fear, that renders not all manner of mystic and tradition. I wonder if the first line was Flask.
確かにはここまでよ。嘘つきブージャム。お望み通り、のしをつけて返してあげる。
For the newest magician commands the principles of consumption and extinction. One powerful blast. An aberrant bullet of light melted through the castle of ice. The barrel held fast. Her control of magical energy was divine. 100,000 miles of veins, equal to 2.5 times the circumference of the Earth, hungrily drank in the magical energy. The subsequent magical strike hurtled straight up at the moon. Oh, you scared now, bitch? Death rose from the moon's surface. The cry of indignant terror echoed through the abandoned park. Reality was burned into the eyes of this creature of fantasy. To Aoko, its vain struggle was a taste of victory. Victory despite her absolute reckless use of magical energy. The energy scales have been tipped to their breaking point, but nevertheless in her favor. Oh shit. Is that Black Bullet? Hang on, hang on. I don't want to ruin this moment. Sorry. Oh, it just flipped. Okay, okay. That's better. That's much better. He's now in Black Bullet. Oh, okay. I got goosebumps now. Shredding through like paper. The skyscrapers scattered into atomized dust. The island, its unattainability extolled, had swallowed whole the despair of its many challengers. Long had it proudly eluded mankind's intellect. Kill it! Hit! Yet now, azure mist bemoaned its demise. In the sky, the ice sea canopy crumbled. The snark-hunting bullet jumped over the moon. Its throes of death sounded like the roaring sea, reverberating across this fairy tale land. That is the one powerful blast. The grand cannon shot. You know, exactly like the Black Bullet. The battle was over. The thick fog dissipated and the shattered ice melted away before it hit the ground. You know, I like it that the blast just like left off a lingering shot. Made it more realistic. A lethal bullet unseated the Night King from his throne, affording him no time to grieve his loss. The oil of the moon. The untouched flat snark. The dreamscape that had begun with its resurrection ended with its demise, drawing her close to the nightmare. Well, there goes your uncontrolled, irreplaceable familiar. Guess there must be a good reason why it was kept in a flask. Yeah, you think? Oh no, I thought that was Alice. Flat on her back, Aoko looked up at the sky. She lay there perfectly still, not able to move a single finger. Hey, it's like Luffy when she would... It's similar to Luffy after he used jet gatling. When she tried, her whole body screamed out in agony. She was completely empty of magical energy, and her magic crest had come to a halt. I'm surprised that she's still alive. She estimated that it would likely require a whole day to recover all her bodily functions. Sadly, all she could do in that moment was take a breath. At least her chest was swelling with pride. She had gone toe-to-toe with the fairy tale monster and had emerged victorious. The battlefield conditions had favored her, it was true, but there was no denying that Aoko had come a long way in the last 6 months. I know, she pulled it off. It's gone forever. Flat Snark would never again return to this world. It was an insanely rare item, so invaluable that it would have been impossible to price it for auction at the association in London. Wonder why. Aoko had sent Alice's priceless treasure to oblivion. Needless to say, things had gotten more than a little out of hand. They had both agreed to the fight, so Alice probably wouldn't complain. Even if she was furious, she would never be so undignified as to show it. Oh no. Now she's hallucinating. Dizziness? The second Aoko relaxed, her fatigue finally caught up with her. She did everything in her power to fight off the overwhelming drowsiness. Aside from few minor internal injuries, her body was miraculously unscathed. Really? After all of that shot? That first, second, and third shot? She felt like she could probably stand up and dust herself off after a bit of rest. The golden moon continued to burn in the night sky. Aoko's bleary eyes went wide in astonishment. She was still unable to lift a finger. What? You're telling me it's still fucking alive? Oh, huh, never mind. She sighed in resignation. What? You fucking shitting me. Aoko accepted that her final stand left her with only 10 seconds before she burned to ash too. Elsewhere, just a short moment prior, Buffeted by strong winds atop the roller coaster, Sojiro gravely peered down at the ground.
むむ
Oh, this is flashback. All he could muster was a single murmur. Mumu. You could see Aoko drawing on top of some drawing on the ground and...
なんだあれいくらなんでも頑丈すぎないか
In the distance, there was something familiar in the direction of the ruined House of Mirrors. Sojiro's job to throw Aoko's hair from a great height was complete. While not the most impressive of a task, it was absolutely a matter of life or death. And to top it all off, just thinking about how he was going to get back to the down to the ground was making him dizzy. He had experienced more than enough trouble for one day.
いやでもあれ
Ah, this was the Grand Canyon scenario. He was flustered as he stood atop the swaying bridge. Oh, so we're going in Sojiro's POV. Skull suddenly appeared in the sky above. On the ground, he could see a circling blue light with Aoko Aozaki in the middle of it. And one more thing. From an angle that only Sojiro could see, a shadow stalked Aoko while she challenged the moon. Wait, he could see it too? It was shaped like a person, missing the lower half of its body. The disembodied torso slowly clawed its way toward Aoko. What? You kidding me? It's still alive? What the fuck? They were still over 600 feet apart. Unfortunately for Aoko, she completely failed to notice it approaching from behind.
遠くて見えないけどあれは
He was sure of what it was now. There was only one thing in the park that would chase Aoko and not him, the puppet.
いやでもほらあるいはひょっとしてただの偶然ではないだろうか
A coincidence. If it really is a coincidence, then how come you're still seeing it? His mind ran in circles. That was a perfectly reasonable reaction. Any grip on reality he might have left was long lost when Aoko started to fire beams of light at the monstrous moon. Whoosh! Aoko's merciless fire buffeted the roller coaster like a storm. Just standing on it was almost enough for him to be thrown off and killed. At any rate, Sojiro couldn't fathom the situation. Should he head back to the entrance of the roller coaster and warn Aoko about the incoming threat? No, there was no way he could make it in time. And to make matters worse, there was a horde of bread down there waiting for him. And it may very well have been the case that Aoko was already aware of the puppet, would take it out as soon as it got closer. If she was, Sojiro was sure he would only be in the way. It did not seem there was anything he could do to help. Oh, that was it. And beyond that, Aoko was not the only one in danger. He was in quite the predicament himself. Can't go home again. The road home was never as safe as one thought. It was as true here as it had been in the mountains. The path he was on was no exception. As risky as the ascent had been, it was even more dangerous to go back down. This was no time to be worrying about others. His shaking legs reminded him that only 200 feet separated him from death.
大丈夫それは分かっているけど
His head was pounding. This was reckless and stupid. Having been raised in the mountains, he was more sensitive to danger than anyone raised in a city, and just thinking about what he's about to do made his throat seized up. There was only one thing he could say for sure.
青崎のことだあれに絶対気づいていない
With sobbing shouts, Sojiro started making his way down the 200-foot frame of the roller coaster. Damn, I'm impressed that he's running down with a falling ice meteor. Man, the adrenaline of this boy. His rate toward death accelerated. He never meant to speed up, but the downward slope propelled him forward. It was too late for regrets. Now that he was running, he had no choice but to go even faster. And time was not on his side. He would never make it in time if he took the long way down. Never mind the bread men crowding the exit of the roller coaster. With the exits blocked, the outcome would be the same whether he went slowly or quickly. There was no reason to rush to his death as desperately as he did. So what if it was futile? Sojiro cleared the doubts from his mind. He turned his attention to what he could do, keep his footing, and try to arrive at the bottom as quickly as he could. He had no idea what impulses were driving his stiff limbs. He just focused on the moment, pushing past the fear and the cold logic. At his core, he was the kind of person to deal with problems head on. There would be time to think about the consequences later. Alright, the Dumpty was still there, but hesitation was not his only obstacle. The worst possible hindrance appeared at a time when not focusing on the track would mean certain death. Sojiro sensed something wrong with the egg had been so studiously observing out of one eye. Something had changed, and at the very moment he realized it, he broke the gaze. Sojiro stumbled, then instinctively caught himself. Oh, thank God! I thought he broke his ankle. It was a miracle he had not fallen. Descending a roller coaster on foot was an act of suicide. The egg stayed right by his side, so close it was likely it would collide with him. Though he was trying not to look at it, he could not help but feel uneasy that the door-like decoration in its center was gradually opening. He cursed his rotten situation, and yet he refused to slow down. He ran even faster, glaring at the egg on his side. I know. What is wrong with you? Sojiro was baffled to find that he was smiling. Perhaps it had something to do with Aoko's charm. Sojiro could not tell one way or the other. He could still feel Aoko's fingers on his skin. Seriously? The trust and expectation she had placed in him was etched into his heart. But what spurred him on was something entirely different. This all stemmed from a much deeper problem. It was something inside him that he could not understand at the time, but would eventually come to terms with one day. He carefully judged the distance as he ran down the track of death. I'm impressed that he could measure it at that time with that small time gap. But the distance between what? That went without saying. It was the distance between himself and the one thing that could save his life. Run, boy! Run, Sojiro, run! He told himself he was going to do it, over and over like a mantra. Sojiro could not believe himself. What he was about to do was incredibly stupid. But what is stupid when smart is not an option? But what is stupid when smart is not an option? Is he gonna jump over? Is he going to jump? Is he going to jump over? Amidst of it all, he laughed at how pointless of such self-reflection was now. Temporary confusion, a psychological throw-eye, both laid his soul bare. What really mattered in life? The answer to that question, what really mattered in life? The answer to that question was simple. His primitive values did not crave success or reward. All he wanted was to live the way he wanted. It wasn't an obligation to the people around him. His desire to live his way was his and his alone. Oh, is this some sort of character death I'm sensing? If the egg had been equipped with vocal function, it would have gasped in shock at what happened next. The boy, who had only tried to escape up until this point, suddenly shifted his weight. He pointed his feet outward instead of inward. On the edge of one rail, he crouched over ever so slightly to maintain momentum and gazed at the floating egg. Oh, is he gonna jump on the egg? Oh, he is jumping over! He soared through the night sky. It was a flight that lasted mere 1.5 seconds. A cordless bungee jump from 100 feet above ground. His destination? The egg. The only thing that would stop his fall. The giant flying egg. Also, he is jumping on the egg. Using it as a weight shift. That scream. He shrieked, this time out of elation, as he desperately clung to the egg's surface. Just earlier, the cold-blooded witch had told him that without fear, the top of a filling would feel no different than a balance beam. This from the same witch that would have been left speechless that she had witnessed this spectacle. It was one thing to be fearless, and another to be reckless. Yeah, I can imagine Aoko being shocked at this. What the boy did next would give her a headache in the days to come. What? Clinging to the egg, he shifted his gaze away from it. He felt the rapid descent. Sojiro, focusing his half-shut eyes on the ground, leaped off the egg once they were a few feet from the ground, then turned back to it, careful to re-establish eye contact. Something so unbelievable, noticed Sojiro. The elevator at the department store and the mysterious floating egg were both just moving objects, virtually indistinguishable from one another. Oh, it's a shame when food goes to waste. He landed near the plaza. The shortcut that almost cost him his life had paid off. Sojiro took off running the second his feet touched the ground. The puppet after Aoko was the only thing on his mind. He paid no mind to the moonlight in the sky. Oh god. Which is worse? The lingering doll, the explosive scatter shot, or the explosive tamago? Nor to the egg, which was furious about being used and seconds away from self-destructing and blasting fragments all over the place. Aoko's dumbfounded expression, sir. Sojiro, move on. Explosions! The curse was complete. The empty egg began to sing its warning, let them know there was no escape. Sharpener from the egg exploded through the air. The ode to Queen Alice that Alice had engraved into Dumpty quickly robbed him of his senses. He snapped back to the task at hand and ran to Aoko, still lying on the ground. His legs moved as if they had a mind of their own, though he couldn't have stopped them anyway, since he could no longer feel them. It's like a three-way death now. Three-way death hazards. Damn! Got out through the skin of the teeth. And a three-way hazard. The scrambled murder case. Piles of rubber became flowers of light blooming from the earth. Woof! He actually got her. The final curtain drew close, and the defeated left the battleground. Had Alice Kuonji seen it happen, she would have been beside herself. The two had escaped by a hair's breadth. The only person in a position to witness that rare mutual destruction was the girl who had been saved from it. The boy who had never stopped running paid it no mind. The safety of the girl in his arms meant infinitely more to him than the miraculous way in which he saved her. Wow, what a heroic mindset. The moon did not wait for dawn to set. The ornamental texture of the fairy tale kingdom faded away. All of the illusions returned to the way they were before, from the instantaneous chords reverberating through the streets, to the puppets welcoming their guests. Peace and quiet reigned once more over a forgotten kingdom, never to be awakened again. Oh, is she standing? How flickered the embers of a late-night dream. Even the electric lamps that illuminated the park. Together, they watched it disappear. Sojiro lay on the ground, desperate, gasping for air like a fish out of water. The curse of the exploding egg had numbed his pain, and he was understandably exhausted after all he had experienced. He looked like he could be blown away by the lightest of breezes. While Alko was also exhausted, she was still in better shape. Focused on taking deep, even breaths, she was already working on to recover her strength. She addressed Sojiro indifferently as her gaze remained on the amusement park. The abruptness of it was a bit theatrical in nature. She wanted to look at him as she spoke, for her pride was simply too great. Huh! Typical tsundere. Oh, now the Mahoyo theme is playing. Not amazing as she did. The moment she had accepted death had seemed like an eternity. She was beside herself in shock at how indifferent she had been as the shards rained down from the moon. But a reassuring voice had snapped her back into reality. Why did he do it? What was he thinking? What moronic things had he done to pull it off? She had no answers for these questions, lying on the ground as she was. All she knew was that he had more than made up for his failure in the House of Mirrors, and then some, in those fateful final moments. She addressed him, hoping to find answers, but found herself unable to probe any further. To dig any deeper would feel like defeat, which is why it was so unlike her to ask him in the first place. Lucky for her, Sojiro had neither the capacity nor sensitivity to understand how egocentric she was being. Really? I know, right? You fired the last ditch of a powerful blast cannon. He stuttered between labored breaths. It was taking so much effort just to breathe that he could not address her properly. She watched him out of the corner of her eye. Thinking back on it, the boy had performed the same role each time. Each and every time he did what he could in spite of his fecklessness. It was far more admirable than her nearly suicidal tactics, even if she did defeat her opponent. I know, and he was surprisingly human at that. He did not even recognize how extraordinary his last act of courage was. At the very least, he had the courage to keep trying whatever he could. A spectator might have viewed him as a supporting actor, which he technically is. His actions were not exactly memorable, but the lead actress he supported did not see it that way. Oh, being sun about it. Even though she is completely exhausted and her body's numb, such inspired actions were wasted in a supporting role. This guy really pulled off the impossible. It was so amazing that she wanted to shout it out as loud as she could possibly could for all the world to hear.
Aozaki?
That's the response you let out. All Aoko could do was sigh. How could she not? Even she was forced to admit that the way he'd snatched her from the jaws of death was dashing. Oh no. Oh god. She's actually charmed by him? Truth to be told, he was a lunatic for doing what he did. She steadied her breathing and composed herself. Well, I guess that day's worth of rest was a lie, huh? While she was in bad shape, she still had her pride as a mage to consider. That was why she felt a need to maintain an air of dignity.
しずきくん、見逃すのは今日だけって話だったけど、あれ、なしでいいわ。とりあえず、命は助けてあげるから。
Mm-hmm. After everything he did for her, I guess paying back the debt wouldn't be enough. She hastily extended her right hand. It was either to shake his or to help him up. However, Sojiro did not take her hand, but instead stood up on his own. Wow, even after all that exhaustion? This night, despite the sheer insanity that he just experienced, his face had not once looked as incredulous as it did now.
何そのリアクションは。
She stammered, worried that she had deeply embarrassed herself. Sojiro's gaze was fixed upon Aoko. What are you all fidgeting about? A problem had dawned on Aoko. Though she normally hated being stared at, this time she did not mind. Rather, she was enjoying the warmth in his eyes and felt like it was something she could almost come to. Come to appreciate. Don't you get it? This isn't just about friendship, and I didn't mean he only likes you either. Believe me when I say that Soji. The conversation came rushing back. Now she's thinking of that, huh? That was a memory better left forgotten.
いかん、それは違う。
Oh, is she denying herself? Pushing Tobimaru's words out of her mind, Aoko turned to Sojiro.
それとこれは別だから。
Oh, classic tsundere line.
私はあんたのこととか、ほんとどうでもいいんだから。
Oh, there it is. There's her being tsundere. Okay, I like it. I like her being Sun-Sun. Puzzled, Sojiro tilted his head.
さっき嫌いだって言われたけど。
You already told me how much you dislike. He responded matter-of-factly to her sudden declaration. He just said it like it's so obvious. She certainly had pointed that out, and to his face no less. It had a mere figure of speech that he was not meant to take literally, but now was not the time to belabor the point.
そうじゃなくて、あなたが私に惚れてても期待しないでって言ってるの。
Oh my god. Yet, belabor she did anyway. Aoko blushed slightly, realizing how inane she was being. She wondered how she'd ended up in this position. And yet, she knew that she had to get this off her chest. All that was left was to politely wait for his response. I can't date you. Such heartbreakingly painful words were too much for the simple boy to hear. His shoulders slumped as if the world was coming to an end. Or so Aoko had imagined. On the contrary, Sojiro was sitting there in deep thought.
俺が青崎に惚れてるって?
Yeah, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sojiro remembered the words as if they were a magic spell. She shot right back with the affirmative. After a moment of deep contemplation, the boy turned to the expectant girl and said,
なんで?
What do you think of that? I knew he misinterpreted those words. I knew it. You know, he should have phrased it in a more appropriate wording as a friend and not just like a romantic partner. Oh my god, Soji! I know you're ditzy, but you had to blew that out. Oh my god. Why do you think that? Why do you think? Oh, Sojiro. I guess that's the boy in the mountain for you. All of those slideshows, all them shots. He had to be joking, but he was not. He was completely serious. He liked her, but he didn't like her. She must have been so traumatized in that after this. Oh. Of course, the vice president had jumped to conclusions. This boy had no interest in romance. He probably didn't even know what that was. She was incredibly embarrassed by how confused Sojiro still appeared to be. Her rosy complexion spread throughout her entire body. Oh, she's literally shaking.
もう一度聞くけど、なんで
He's asking again!
そりゃこっちが聞きたいわよ
She just knocked his head out.
飛び丸の大バカ野郎
With that, even though she's so exhausted, she had enough energy to punch him. And just like that, she had lost her cool and given in to an unjustifiable outburst. I wonder what this reminds me of. Carnival Phantasm, when Aoko kicked Shikitono in the face? I guess that's natural. I guess that's natural for her. Funzuke. It was time to seal off the area and destroy all evidence. Which one? The damage? Or this damage? Aoko's embarrassment devolved into sheer panic, and her grudge against Tobimaru suddenly manifested as criminal assault. She lashed out with a punch that could have taken out a bird mid-flight. More specifically, it was a brutal right hook. Ah, that's all you could say? Aoko blinked. Her blow had connected with something solid, snapping out of her reverie. Her temper had lashed out at the completely defenseless Sojiro. It had been a splendid blow with all her weight behind it, knocking him out cold. Sojiro groaned, crumpling to the ground. Her punch finished the job that the curse had started. If not for the discomfort on his face, he appeared almost to be sleeping. Aoko convinced herself that she was napping, not concussed.
いっか予定通りになったものね
Ah yes, consider her punch like a sleeping pill. The tension in her shoulders eased away as she looked down at Sojiro. A ton had gotten in her way over the course of today, but the day was saved. For now. With nobody left to butt heads, she felt exhaustion finally overtake her.
うわ歩いて帰れるかな私
Her fatigue was enough to make her complain out loud. When she thought about it, she realized that this was the first time she had used up all of her magical energy, and the first time she had participated in a battle of this scale without any prior preparation. Though in truth,
私一人じゃどっちも相打ちだったっけ
she felt somewhat proud as she whispered those words. Normally, it was something that she would beat herself up over, but instead, she simply shrugged her shoulders with a bitter smile. After all, it was thanks to the person sleeping by her side.
ね聞こえてないわよね
As if the night had swallowed her voice before it reached him, she received no response. Confident, she continued in an even quieter voice.
そのありがとう十分に助けてもらったわ
Of course, there was no response from Sojiro, and she was not expecting one. Saying it for the record was enough. Aoko watched Sojiro sleep for a while, then pulled something out of her pocket. It was the palm-sized glass bottle her roommate had given her, and she opened with a pop.
でもそれとこれとは別だから
Leaving behind words colder than a winter chill at night, she called out his name. She barely sensed the bottle moving. As the silhouette of the fallen boy appeared to blur, she got the feeling that the weight of the bottle had increased slightly.
うわどうなってんだろうこれ
What appeared to be human form could clearly be seen inside the glass. Alice Kuonji's tools were mystics that confounded even the most knowledgeable of mages. As soon as Aoko tried to analyze them with logic or reason, she was already out of her depth. Knowing this all too well, Aoko closed the bottle and watched the boy disappear as if by some magic trick.
まったく、こんなの手品じゃなくて魔法だって。
She muttered as she looked into the magic bottle. She sucked him in like a Fenton thermos? Its weight had not changed significantly, and she had no idea how it worked. But the one thing she did know was that there was a human being inside it. Its lightweight was almost unnerving, closer to empty air than a human being. It was about as heavy as one would expect if they bottled a summer breeze. Though, that did fit her image of Sojiro perfectly.
アリスの言う通り。
She muttered to no one in particular as she recalled the past.
ほんと、私らしくない。
Aoko wore a bittersweet smile. Her usual moodiness was gone. It was a dangerous world out there. It was good to have someone to keep her on her toes. With a wry chuckle, she flicked the magic bottle with her finger and set off walking. Walking to where? Back to the mansion? And the lingering lights are still there. She could hear a bell in the distance, signaling the end of the play. An ephemeral dream gave way to a reality. In the grand scheme of things, it had been but an instant. As the actors exited stage left, the last of the lights silently flickered out. And so, the long-dead amusement park played its final role as a memory for a boy and a girl. Close curtains. And scene. Well, that was Chapter 5, Part 2. The Kitsyland arc. Damn. What a trip. To think that Alice is familiar would just go berserk like that. I mean, there was a reason that was kept in a flask for a good reason. And for such a rare... I don't know. Is the Fairy Tale King could compete against a divine servant? Like a god? I don't think so. Maybe. But, hey, who knows? But yeah! Chapter 5! Oh god! That was quite the long run. So in the end, I was lucky. The end was quite the treat. So Aoko sealed Sojiro into a magic bottle. Well, I guess I'll end this stream here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this chapter. I gotta say, this chapter was... It almost seemed like it was a complete endgame. Like, it was a final brink. Like all of them last resorts. Damn. So many shit that happened in a single night. So many. It felt like hours. But it all happened in a single night. But anyways, I'm gonna have to end this stream. This has been Nex-oz. I hope you all enjoyed this stream. And I hope you all have a good day. And so am I. Thank you for watching. But yeah, overall, good chapter. Good chapter.